permitted blanks to be used in role play, correct?
Correct.
And your prior testimony was that you didn't see that, correct?
Not in the basic recruit curriculum.
So when I asked you about the training manual, you were still thinking about the basic curriculum, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you have had a chance now to review the training manual that I was asking about prior to coming back in here, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that the FDLE training firearms instructor manual, which is part of the FDLE curriculum total, permits the use of blanks in a role play scenario, correct?
It talks about it in the instructor manual, which is a manual designed to train new instructors.
Okay, so it...
And
I'm sorry.
what it talks about is the availability of using blanks and marking cartridges in role-playing situations. And what they're describing in that paragraph is role-playing exercises based on law enforcement.
Right, and so it discusses that a role-play scenario can be developed using blanks and marking cartridges to provide realism, correct?
Correct.
And this is instructing people who will be instructors that they can permit their students or whoever they're training to use blanks to provide realism between people, correct?
My interpretation of that is that the instructors are being taught how to use role-playing exercises to be able to train and teach other law enforcement officers, not civilians.
Okay, well, law enforcement officers are people, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so you would agree with me the safety of using blanks, we don't somehow expose law enforcement officers to likely death or great bodily harm, but only really look to protect civilians, correct?
That's correct.
So FDLE in this role-playing and using blanks is letting instructors know that you can use these with other people that are training to be law enforcement, and that's okay, correct?
That's correct.
And it also goes further to say that, would you agree with me, that appropriate safety checks for all participants should be required before, during, and after the class, correct?
Correct.
So again, the manual is stating that blanks can be used as long as people are using them safely, correct?
That is correct.
Part of the reason that they have this is because when they're training these people, they talk about how it allows the participant to experience the stressful situation and verbal interaction, but removing live fire, correct?
Correct.
And that's within the training manual. Again, we are taking away live fire, meaning projectiles and bullets coming at you.
Correct.
Live fire training involves the simunitions, right? That's part of the live fire training. Like the projectile and simunitions.
Correct.
And FDLE approves this role-playing with blanks to include anything from ranging from knowledge of the law to handling suspects, correct?
I don't remember seeing anything in there that specifically says that.
Can I help you refresh your recollection if you could look at it?
Please.
Yeah, first what is?
You may.
Does that refresh your recollection?
It does, thank you.
Okay, so FDLE approves the use of blanks in role-playing for anything ranging from knowledge of the law to handling suspects, correct?
Okay, yes.
All right. Thank you.
May I briefly?
Briefly.
Actually, on the exhibit, no, it's And just to clarify, this morning when we spoke, you were talking about the new cadet curriculum, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and this that you were just referencing is people who are going to be firearms instructors instructing law enforcement officers on force-on-force training, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, sir, you may step down. State, call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The state calls Gary Negrinelli.
you stand here and face the clerk to be sworn, please?
We swear or affirm that the testimony given in this class will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
This one, please. And just watch yourself. Thank you.
What's your name? Make sure you speak into the microphone. You may inquire.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Can you please turn and introduce yourself to the members of our jury?
Yes, my name is Special Agent Gary Negrinelli with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
How long have you worked with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Just over 2 years.
And you said you're a special agent there?
Yes, sir.
What do you do as a special agent with FDLE?
We conduct various felony investigations, usually crossing over county lines where the local departments can't handle.
How long have you been a law enforcement officer?
I've been in law enforcement for approximately 14 years now.
Before you worked at FDLE, I think you said you've been there a little over 2 years. Where did you work before FDLE?
Prior to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, I was a special agent with ABT, the Florida Alcohol, Beverage, and Tobacco Agency.
How long were you there?
Approximately 1 year.
Before ABT?
Prior to ABT, I spent most of my law enforcement career with the Seminole Police Department. I spent the first 2 years there as a road patrol officer. Then I was promoted to detective, spent the next 9 years in the Criminal Investigation Division as a detective.
What did you do for work before the Seminole Police Department?
Prior to Seminole Police Department, I was a probation and parole officer for approximately 7 years with the state of Florida.
Have any college degrees?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice.
During your the training that you went through to become a law enforcement officer and your you said about 14-year career, have you ever been hit with a simunition round?
Yes, I have.
Tell us what happens when you hit with a simunition round.
Yes, simunitions round or an FX round shoots out a paint-colored cartridge, and it leaves a sting or it could leave a welt as well.
Non-lethal ammunition, though, right?
Yes, non-lethal.
Where's your office located?
Fort Myers.
On August 9th, 2016, did you become involved in the investigation of the shooting death involving Mary Knowlton?
Yes, I did.
How did you get involved in this case?
I was contacted by my supervisor after hours in the early evening of August 9th, and I was instructed to report to the Punta Gorda Police Department in reference to an officer-involved shooting that occurred earlier that evening.
Were you assigned to be the lead investigator or the case agent for this case?
Yes, when I arrived, I was told I was going to be the case agent.
Do you remember what time you arrived at the police department?
I'm not sure exactly what time I arrived. When I arrived, other agents and supervisory staff had already arrived before me.
Did crime scene analyst Lee Dewey arrive at the crime scene?
Yes, he did.
Do you recall if he was there before you or if he came after you got there?
I can't recall.
When you arrived at the police department, what did you do?
We were brought to a small conference room, myself and other special agents with our Fort Myers office, as well as supervisory staff. I believe investigators from the state attorney's office were there as well. And there we were briefed on the situation that happened by Captain Jason Ciaschini with the Punta Gorda Police Department.
Did he give you a little information about what had happened, things like that?
Yes, he basically gave a briefing.
Okay, resisting is to the form.
I understand. After you spoke with Captain Ciaschini, what did you and other special agents do at the crime scene?
Other agents were assigned to interview the several witnesses that were there that night. This included approximately 31 civilians that were part of the attendees during the event. 11 sworn personnel from the Punta Gorda Police Department, one non-sworn individual with the Punta Gorda Police Department, and 5 Punta Gorda EMS fire individuals.
Did you know, did you do what's known as a walkthrough of the crime scene?
Yes, approximately 9:30 that evening, myself, my supervisor, the assistant special agent in charge, and the special agent in charge of the Fort Myers office conducted a walkthrough of the crime scene. Also present there was senior crime laboratory analyst Lee Dewey.
Was it raining when you viewed the crime scene?
Yes, it was.
Did you have an opportunity to watch the surveillance video from the parking lot of the police department?
Yes, that was viewed. It was provided to us sometime later, and we were able to view it.
During your interviews of those 31 civilian witnesses, at some point were you able to meet with a woman named Suzanne Paquin?
Yes, I was. She was interviewed by another agent. She told that agent that she had taken pictures of the event that evening.
Did you collect those photos?
Yes, I did.
Were there any photos collected from Lieutenant David Lipker?
Yes, he was also interviewed by another special agent that evening, and that special agent approached me and informed me that Lieutenant Lipker had taken photos of the crime scene after the event occurred.
The night of, on August 9th, when you were at the police department, did you secure Officer Cole's canine vehicle there?
Yes, I did.
How did you do that?
By placing evidence tape over all four doors and the hatchback of the canine vehicle and signing my name and dating it on the evidence tape.
And were you present when Lee Dewey was collecting items of evidence from the crime scene?
Yes, I was the following day. Oh, I'm sorry, from the crime scene or from the vehicle?
How about from the patrol car area, the two?
Yeah, the crime scene, that was that night. Yes, I was present.
And then the next day was the search on Officer Cole's car?
Yes, sir.
Skipping forward just to August 22nd, did you and Special Agent Patrick Crow conduct an interview of Gary Nolan?
Yes, we did.
Now we go back to the night when you were called out on August 10th at 1 o'clock in the morning. Did you interview Chief Tom Lewis?
Yes, I did.
Was there another special agent present for that interview?
Yes, Special Agent Supervisor Patrick Crow, my supervisor.
Before you conducted that interview, was Tom Lewis sworn in?
Yes, he was.
Was that interview audio recorded?
Yes, it was.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness with an exhibit?
You may.
Special Agent Nevernelli, I'm approaching you. I'm going to hand you what's been marked, pre-marked for identification as State's Exhibit Number 131. Do you recognize that exhibit, sir?
Yes, I do.
How are you able to recognize it?
I have my initials and date on it.
What is that exhibit?
This is Exhibit R1, or 131.
And it's a CD.
Yes.
What is on that CD?
This is the interview that we conducted of Chief Tom Lewis.
Is the interview that is recorded on that CD a fair and accurate recording of the interview you conducted on August 10th?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the State will move to introduce State's 131 into evidence.
You may. Any objection to State's Exhibit 131? State's Exhibit 131 will be admitted into evidence for stipulation. You may.
This is another copy of the standard instruction.
Are you publishing?
May I have permission to publish?
Yes. Members of the jury, you are about to hear an audio recording. The court instructs you that the recording has been edited to eliminate irrelevant portions that would not add to your understanding of the case. The fact that the recording has been edited should not concern you in any way and must not impact the way you view and consider this evidence.
It's 10 of 10. 10 of 10. File 8 of 10. Record. Record.
Hi, this is Special Agent Gary Negrinelli of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Today's date is August 10th, 2016. Approximate time is 1:06 a.m. I'm currently at the Punta Gorda Police Department, investigation involving officer-involved shooting. I'm conducting an interview with Chief Thomas Lewis of the Punta Gorda Police Department. Conducting the interview with me is Special Agent Supervisor Patrick Crowe. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
I do.
Okay. And could you say your name?
Tom Lewis,
Okay. And could you spell?
T-O-M-L-E-W-I-S.
Okay. And where are you currently employed and for how long?
I'm going to go to the police department for approximately 18 years.
Okay. And on the date in question, yesterday, August 9th, were you performing duties related as a sworn officer?
I was.
Did you understand what we're here for?
Yes, sir.
What we're going to talk about? Okay. Were you present during the incident?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Can you tell me what your involvement was during the incident?
During this particular incident, I was narrating to the onlookers that were participating in the Citizens Academy, detailing essentially what they were looking at as far as her, Mary Knowlton's approach and things like that. And we essentially just were, I was part of the onlookers that were watching the events unfold.
And continue. What happened next?
The scenario, which we've done in the past, is essentially a suspicious person call, where Mary would be acting as the police officer, Officer Cole would be role-playing as the suspicious person, and ultimately he would retrieve a revolver with blank rounds from the rear of the vehicle and surprise her with the blank rounds before she had an opportunity to handle the situation, I guess, if you will. Typically, that scenario is then followed up with a second scenario, which is a shoot scenario for the role-playing officer, if you will, Mary, in this regard. As that first scenario played out, Mary went in between the two cars, which is, again, is very typical. Officer Cole intentionally kind of lures each one of these potential role players into that scenario as part of the role play. And ultimately he retrieved the revolver from behind the vehicle and I believe fired 3 rounds. I went around to the back side of the unmarked white police vehicle that was involved in this scenario and noticed what was clearly a bullet hole, I think, in the passenger side.
That pretty much ended your involvement?
For that initial scene, yeah. I mean, as the chief, I've been involved in everything since. As far as organizing, you name it. Anything from media to separating witnesses. I did address the group. All of the onlookers were then taken back into to our training room here. Obviously, I had lots of questions. Half the people didn't understand what they had just seen. They didn't know if it was a medical episode or not. And I informed the girl that there was a possibility that she was shot with a live round. Other than that, we needed need them to stay there. We were requesting that, nobody leave so that, as witnesses, they could be interviewed. And I've been involved in everything. I mean, like I said, you name it, I've been doing it.
You had mentioned that this scenario kind of thing happened before with the Citizens Academy.
We do several different groups. This is definitely the first time that we've done it. We've done this many times in the past.
How many times do you think?
10.
10 times, like in the last year, or 10?
Maybe. I'm ballparking, to be honest with you, I don't know.
Okay. How long has this Citizen Academy been going?
Typically, when we do, the city of Punta Gorda has a Citizens Academy in which they go to different city departments and kind of spend, 1 day in finance, and then typically our time when they come to our facility is split between us and the fire department. But our presentation is the same. The layout of this piece of paper, minus some of the times, we tweak it here and there, but the overall structure of it is very similar each time. So this is the reason that we use this particular structure, is because we've just used it in the past. We changed the date and we tweaked it a little bit here and there, but it's essentially the same structure.
Can you recall the last time that you did this scenario training with the Citizen Academy?
Off the top of my head, I don't.
Okay.
Chief, excuse me, can you just tell us what the purpose of these type of role plays are for the Citizens Academy, where they're actually taking part in you being involved in something like this?
Sure. The purpose of it is to give the community, people out there, some exposure to what those millisecond type decisions take. Considering the national attention that every police video that you see out there is highly scrutinized, this is more so to connect with our community and showing them that sometimes it's not as black and white as the media makes it out to be. These are decisions that you're going to make in a split second, and they're not as easy as armchair quarterbacking it. And up until yesterday, these things have been extremely successful. The discussion that we have after the fact is always very positive and enlightening, I think, for the community as far as the stress level and acting under stress.
And from what we learned tonight, Mary Knowlton, the lady who was shot, she was given a simunition weapon?
She was.
Okay, and the purpose for that was?
Typically, this scenario that obviously went horribly wrong is followed up with a second scenario. And in that scenario, she has the actual option of quote-unquote shooting our bad guy with this simulated round. So that's the purpose. The entire purpose of the exercise is to allow her the decision as to whether she's to shoot or not shoot, type of thing. So
What a police officer would be faced with.
correct.
Okay. And what's the second scenario after this one? If this one was successful, like she had this simunition weapon in her hand.
Correct.
Right. So if this was a successful scenario where, he did the surprise and got one off on her, would she then go through the second one, or would somebody else?
She would. She would then go through the second scenario. The second scenario is two gentlemen that are fighting. She's responding essentially just to that. That's the only information that she gets. Typically, the people that go through the scenario will start to approach. They give some verbal commands, and then the larger of the two officer role players that are having this fake altercation then turns their attention onto the officer role player and starts to charge them unarmed. And typically what we see is those people panic and shoot. And then of course there's that discussion that follows to talk about, well, you just shot an unarmed man, how is this going to play out in the media, and we kind of go through all of those type of scenario-based discussions.
And in the past, you've had great success with the way the class, the Citizens Academy responds.
Correct. Yeah, we've done this with Leadership Charlotte classes, we've done this with our Citizens Academy, now with the Chamber, several different groups go through it. I mean, it's...
How long is the Citizens Academy, like this group? Was it a night, or was it 2 nights, or was it a week, or was it a bunch of nights spread out over months?
No, Citizens Academy might be a little deceiving. This particular class was set on specifically for the Punta Gorda Chamber. They kind of heard about our classes in the past, and they wanted something specifically tailored to them for their group, business owners and stuff. And we put this on, and it was only 2 hours in length. This isn't a multi-day, this is a one evening, 2-hour event.
So this is more of a class as opposed to...
Correct.
Like,
Using
because I've heard
the same...
academies where they come like one night a week for like 3 months, and then they get a certificate.
Our City of Punta Gorda Citizens Academy, which is kind of where the structure was born, if you will, is that. It's like one night a week or one day a week, and you kind of go through over a month's period of time type of thing.
And then they actually graduate and say, we
Yes.
get a certificate from you.
Correct. We essentially called it the Chamber Citizens Academy, whatever you want them to do, using that verbiage again, because this is just a similar structure that we use for those type of classes.
Now, let's talk about the officers involved in this program tonight.
Okay.
How many officers were involved? Did it start out with classroom?
It started out with classroom instruction. That was me for about 25 to 30 minutes. All of the officers that were there were introduced. It's more part of a community-friendly get-to-know-you session, as well as the presentation. Captain Woodard was in there. I believe Captain Shishkini was in there. Detective DeVault was in there. Our accreditation manager, Gloria Satanic, was in there. Lieutenant Salzman was in there. And I think that's it.
So everybody musters here at what time?
It started at 5:30. And we were milling around 5-ish, before that, getting set up.
And this was for a specific group, Chamber of Commerce group?
Specifically, yes, sir.
Okay, and so they show up here, they're brought into the training room, that big training room there?
Yep.
And then essentially you kick it off with your introduction and welcoming. And then is the purpose of tonight was to expose them to what officers go through in high-stress situations similar to this? Or is that just part of it?
Yeah, that's just part of it. I mean, the second part of it is, it's more so supposed to be fun, I guess, and interactive and educational at the same time, as opposed to just the presentation. The presentation I give in the beginning is somewhat dry. It's a lot about budget, personnel allocation, and more infrastructure type stuff. So they had a little fun at the end, so it's just not like boring lecture type stuff.
Getting back to the scenario at hand, can you explain to us, who's overseeing that tonight? Who was the hands-on person in charge of that scenario?
That's a great question. There were a lot of people involved in it. Katie Heck, who was our community services supervisor, was overseeing the entire event, setting it up. She really kind of organized it from laying out what you see here. I told you we kind of tweak it, for class to class. Setting up the personnel who were going to be assigned to which portion of it. And then Lieutenant Salzman and Captain Woodard were kind of tag teaming different portions of it to make sure that everything was kind of going on time and making sure that everything was going smooth as planned.
Relative to the actual event itself, involving the semi-munitions weapon as well as the weapon that was supposed to have the blanks in it.
Correct.
Was there anybody appointed to be what we would call safety officer for role play such as this?
Captain Woodard specifically loaded and checked the munitions gun. He handed it to me, with the magazine out of the munitions gun that we were given to Mary Nolan. I looked at it before I gave it to her, and that was kind of checked, and then he gave her some safety lectures before the scenario started. As far as Officer Cole is concerned, my understanding is that Detective DeVault was there while he loaded the gun. And other than that, I don't know that anybody else checked the gun.
Okay. So as you sit here today, at this point, you have no information that you know that somebody specifically checked the gun other than Officer Cole?
Correct.
Okay. And you believe it was Detective
DeVault.
DeVault?
I was not there, but
Okay.
that's my understanding.
You understand that he watched them load the gun?
Correct.
Do you know where the loading of the gun occurred?
I do not.
Do you know where the gun was retrieved from?
During the scenario, or are you talking prior to?
No, prior.
I do not.
Okay. Was the gun a department gun?
We have not determined that yet.
Do the reported blanks come from a specific area, like a vault or an armory here, or does that come from Officer Cole's possession?
And my understanding is that we purchased them and gave them to him for canine training, so they're in his possession.
So he uses blanks for his canine training?
Correct.
Okay. Is there anything we haven't asked you that you would like to share with us, just, that you think is important for the investigation that we haven't asked, Chief?
Not that I can think of.
I'm sorry, again, you don't know where the handgun that Officer Cole was using, where it was kept prior to the scenario?
No.
Do you know where it was used during the scenario, where it came into play? It was brought in?
If during the scenario, again, I'm familiar with the scenario.
Sure.
It's typically left on the back bumper of one of the vehicles, which was the unmarked vehicle at this point. And I saw during the scenario, Officer Cole went back to the rear of the vehicle. And I'm going to assume that he retrieved the gun at that point, because that's typically what we do during that scenario. It plays out the same way every time. And then moments later, I heard the shots ring out.
And normally you hear the shots ring out because they're blanks, correct?
Correct. Way back when, we used ammunition rounds for this.
Okay.
And we had role players who sometimes wore helmets, sometimes didn't. Some of them said they couldn't hear it because the bang wasn't. So we transitioned many scenarios ago to blank rounds, so it would have more of an impact.
Okay. And is there always the same people involved in doing this scenario, this type of shooting scenario? Is it the same officer all the time, or do you use different officers?
No, we use different officers, but Officer Cole has been used in this specific role several times.
Several times.
And this is not his first or second time. I mean, he's done this quite a few times.
Okay. Anything else at this point? Chief, do you have anything you want to add?
No, sir.
Okay. Would we be able to talk to you again if we need to?
Anytime you need.
We'll basically conclude this interview for now. We appreciate your cooperation. Or no?
Special Agent Nichols, I'm going to publish States 114 to you. So we want to- This sort of schedule or itinerary for the Chamber of Police night, were you provided this by the County Board of Police Department that night?
Yes, I was.
Thank you. I have no further questions for the witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So, you were the lead investigator, and then I guess assigned by FDLE to investigate this, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You got involved on August 9th, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What was the date that you ended FDLE's investigation?
Well, I turned in an investigative summary approximately 2 months later to the state attorney's office. However, the state attorney requested follow-up information, so the investigation continued through January 2017.
So your investigation then went from August till sometime in October, and you turned in what you thought at that time was completion as you saw it, correct?
Yes, sir.
And after you turned in completion as to what you saw to be it, the state attorney's office then engaged you and said, we want more investigation, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they asked you to do things that,
Hearsay?
Sustain.
well, you said the state attorney's office then asked you to do things, correct?
Yes, sir.
Were they things that you had not done already in your investigation?
Yes, sir.
When you turned in your investigation in October, did you believe for your purposes that your investigation
Objection.
You may.
Thanks.
You may.
Special Agent Negrinelli, when you turned in your investigation in October, did you believe that your investigation, to the best of your abilities, was a complete failure?
Yes, sir.
You remember how long after you turned yours in that you were first contacted by the state about doing more investigation?
I can't recall an exact date.
A few weeks, a month?
I would say it was within a couple weeks.
Help me to understand this. You have, as an FDLE investigator, the autonomy to run your investigation as an investigator for the agency, correct?
Yes, sir.
When you were contacted by the state, were you given the same autonomy to investigate, or was the state now directing the investigation?
The state had requested some follow-up investigations, specifically interviews. Then we had the autonomy to conduct the interviews ourselves.
And is that the process from October to January of what you were completing?
Yes, sir.
Now, one of the things that you did is you did a search of Nichols' vehicle, I believe on August 10th of 2016, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in that search of the vehicle, you found items in the back, I guess, of a lockbox of the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And feel free to refer to the report if you need to, I'm going to ask you about some numbers or something. Can you tell the jury, well, first of all, you found boxes of Winchester blanks, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in your investigation, did you determine that the Punta Gorda Police Department purchased Lee Cole prior to this event, the same Winchester blanks?
Yes, sir.
Did you determine the date in which they purchased that for Lee Cole prior to this event?
Yes, we did. We received a requisition and purchase form from Punta Gorda.
And approximately when was the purchase of that?
The requisition was dated February 11th, 2016.
How many boxes of Winchesters did you determine were purchased by the agency for use by Lee Cole on that date?
3.
How many bullets would have been in each box of blanks?
50.
The total amount was 150 purchased by the agency for him?
Correct, sir.
So then, when you went to look in the back of his vehicle, did you locate 3 boxes of Winchester Super X 38 special blank ammunition consistent with what was ordered in February?
Yes, sir. But I believe some of them were missing from the boxes.
Right. So you then did an accounting to find out how many of his 150 were left over as of August 9th, correct?
Correct, sir.
And you did that, can you tell the jury of those rounds, how many did he still have in his possession?
If you give me a second.
And I'm on, if you do report by the serial number 56.
Yes, 2 boxes contained the full amount of 50 cartridges each, and 1 box contained 27 cartridges.
So he had in his possession, remaining on August 9th, 2016, 127 approved blanks to use, correct?
Correct, sir.
Now, did you find in the back of his vehicle any type of Blazer 38 special 148 grain boxes?
Yes, we did, sir.
How many of those boxes did you find in the back of his vehicle?
2 boxes, sir.
And in those 2 boxes, what was the round count listed on the box if you had not used any yet?
One contained 35 cartridges, and the other one contained 40 cartridges.
And the boxes carried 50 rounds at capacity?
Yes, sir.
So if he had 2 boxes of 50 round capacity, 1 box you said had 40 out of 50?
Yes, sir.
So that would be 10 missing if it was 50 to begin with, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the other box had 35 out of 50, which would be 15 missing if it was full to begin with.
Yes, sir.
Showing that 25 of those bullets had been used, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Those bullets in that box are the ones that are known as the wad cutters, correct?
Yes, sir.
Had you, prior to this, had any experience with wad cutters?
Yes, sir.
So you knew what you were looking for as far as in a wad cutter when you saw these?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this. Then, when you looked at these and you saw the box there, were there marks on the box which would identify these as bullets? Meaning that a projectile.
I don't know if the specific word bullet is on the box.
Okay. Was there something mentioning the word special 148 grain, HBWC?
Yes, sir.
What's the HBWC stand for?
Hollowed base wad cutter.
And what's the word grain relevant
It has to do with the amount of grains in each cell. It varies from each cell.
As to the projectile?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you saw this, when you opened his trunk and you saw this, did you as the investigator immediately recognize this is a box that contains projectiles?
Contains lethal projectiles, yes, sir.
Now, you also determined that the Punta Gorda Police Department did not carry this brand of laser or wad cutters, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you do something called an E-trace on the weapon that Lee Cole possessed in this event?
Yes, sir, I did.
And tell the jury what an E-trace is.
An E-trace is a request done through ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and it traces the purchase, excuse me, the purchase dates of the firearm.
In this case, did you determine when Lee Cole came into possession of this firearm?
I'm sorry, say again.
Determine the date in which Lee Cole came in possession of this firearm.
Not according to the, excuse me, not according to the report.
Was there any other evidence that indicated to you a time frame in which Lee Cole would have possessed this firearm?
To the question, was there any other? You want to approach? You may.
Was there any other evidence that indicated to you when Lee Cole was in possession?
Yes, sir. There was a Smith & Wesson box that was also recovered from Officer Cole's vehicle with his name, the serial number matching the gun that we retrieved from the crime scene, and a date.
What was the date associated with that box?
I can't recall right now.
June 13th, 2015?
That sounds right.
Now, the E-trace actually also lists the purchaser information and the possessor information, is that right? Did you determine who actually, let me ask this, when you ran the E-trace, did it show Lee Cole as the purchaser?
Sustained.
Did you learn who, well, do you know who actually purchased this gun?
Overruled.
Yes, sir.
Who purchased the gun?
The purchaser, according to the E-trace, ATF E-trace, was a
Excluding the E-trace, do you know who purchased it?
No, I would not.
Did you interview anybody or have contact with anybody that you believe to be the purchaser of the gun?
No, I do not, sir.
Other than the date on the box of the Smith & Wesson, did you determine in your investigation when Lee Cole first used this weapon in any type of event?
I can't recall when the exact time that he first used it. No, sir.
Did you ever determine that, or is that just an unknown?
That's an unknown, sir.
Did your agency have an occasion to interview Lieutenant Katie Heck?
Yes, sir.
How many times was she interviewed?
Twice, sir.
On the first interview of Katie Heck, did your agency learn anything related to the wad cutters that you had found?
Yes, sir.
What did you learn in the first interview?
It was Lieutenant Katie Heck that gave the wad cutters to Officer Lee Cole.
Now, so I can clarify this, isn't it true that in the first interview that Katie Heck advised you that she gave blanks?
Yes, sir.
After that interview, your agency did work to determine things about requisitioning blanks, and you did some more determinations on the boxes that you had, correct?
Yes, sir.
One of the things you did on the boxes, after she said she sent blanks, which, by the way, if you just left that interview, she would not have been saying she gave the wad cutters in the first interview, correct?
Correct, sir.
So, one of the things you did investigatively is you decided at that point to do more research about that, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you did more research about that, that's when you found the requisition form that she had given Nicole blanks to the agency, correct?
Correct, sir.
In her interview, she originally had told you that she didn't recall ever doing that, correct?
Correct, sir.
You then sent the wad cutter boxes. Did you send both boxes out for prints?
I believe so, yes, sir.
And can you tell the jury on what date you were advised that there was a result on one of the boxes?
If you can give me a second.
I'm looking at the help 067.
I'm sorry, I don't have that report in front of me.
Would it help refresh your recollection if I showed your report?
Yes.
Evening.
Please just review that and let me know if that refreshes your recollection.
Yes, sir.
What was the date in which you were notified there was a result on the fingerprint analysis?
September 28th, 2016.
Who did that fingerprint come back to?
Lieutenant Katie Heck.
Did you at some point in an interview confront her with the fact that you had a requisition form showing that she had purchased blanks through the agency for Lee Cole?
Yes, sir.
And when you confronted her with that form, did she then acknowledge she knew she had in fact purchased him approved blanks to the agency?
Yes, sir.
Did you also then at that point ask her further questions or show anything as far as the wad cutters to her?
Yes, sir.
And did she ultimately tell you or acknowledge that she provided the wad cutters to Lee Cole?
Yes, sir.
The interview that we heard with Chief Lewis, you were present for that, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that interview started at 1:06 a.m.?
Yes, sir.
Did you know at that point how long Chief Lewis had been awake?
No, sir.
Do you know how long he'd been at work?
No, sir.
You did know that he had been dealing with whatever the scenario was from the point it happened to the point that you interviewed him, correct?
Yes, sir.
When he discussed this with you, he agreed to talk to you, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you have to read him his Miranda rights or anything of that nature?
No, sir.
Did he voluntarily talk to you?
Yes, sir.
Miranda is something that you would read to somebody to advise them of their rights in case that you're going to ask them questions that you thought could reasonably.
Objection to relevance.
When he was advising you of information, would you agree with me that he was, did you ever ask him to clarify when he gave you certain information as to where he would have heard it from or how he would have known it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
Sure. For example, at one point in the interview, somebody asked him about the fact of the safety checks, correct?
Yes, sir.
Jeff Woodard and the simulations gun, et cetera, right?
Yes, sir.
Then a question was asked about Lee Cole, correct?
Specifically?
Saying that somebody looked at Lee Cole's gun.
Yes, sir.
And he said to me, my understanding is Justin Duvall was there or may have done that with him, something of that nature.
Yes, sir. I believe he said that Detective DeVault was present during the loading of the firearm.
He told you repeatedly that was his understanding, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you ask any further questions at that point as to why that was his understanding at that point?
No, sir.
And you know at that point at 1 in the morning that this scene is now about 6 hours old, correct?
Yes, sir.
You know that Chief Lewis kept everybody there to make sure FDLE could have access to them, correct?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier that just on scene, what you were dealing with were, I believe, 31 civilians, is that right?
Yes, sir.
11 sworn personnel,
Yes, sir.
1 non-sworn personnel,
Yes, sir.
and then anybody related to the fire, that's correct?
Yes, I believe there was 5 fire and EMS personnel.
The building in which you were conducting these was at the Punta Gorda Police Department,
Yes, sir.
and the Punta Gorda Police Department shares the same building, at least connected with the fire department.
Yes, sir.
And of these 48 people, the chief of the agency had kept them available for FDLE to do interviews as close as you can as to the time of this event, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned the state attorney had investigators there at that point.
Yes, sir.
Were they attorneys or state attorney investigators?
State attorney investigators.
And were you permitted to conduct the investigation as you saw fit as the lead FDLE agent?
Yes, sir. And again, your question?
Right, and I'm on, it looks like you're 17, age 17. When he advised you, Lieutenant Sullivan and Captain Woodard were kind of tag teaming and went over that he's trying to make sure things ran smooth, as planned, different portions of it. Did you ask him anything as far as explaining what that meant as far as his understanding?
I believe this part was being questioned by Supervisor Patrick Crow.
And so Patrick Crow didn't go into any clarification about what that meant, correct?
Correct, sir.
As part of your investigation, that night, you had not opened up Nichols' trunk yet, correct?
Yes, sir. Correct.
The next day, is that correct?
Correct, sir.
As part of the investigation that you do, when you find things out, since you're investigating independently, I take it you're not sharing that information with the Hunter Grove Police Department at that point, correct?
Correct, sir.
So when you start discovering, well, when you discovered the wad cutters, at that point, had you determined if they were used in Nichols' gun?
We hadn't positively determined that at that point, not yet.
But once you saw that, you knew that was a lead now that you needed to investigate.
Yes, sir.
You knew that could explain what had happened, correct?
Yes, sir.
Up until that point, in your investigative process, you would agree with me that there was some unknown as to how blanks could have caused a projectile to come out and strike somebody, correct?
Well, we had an idea that it was lethal rounds from the cartridge casings that were collected that night.
Right. But the step back was when you're doing your investigation as to finding out if somebody said, well, somebody used these rounds or gave them or I saw what happened. The witnesses that you were interviewing there at that point, the question was, how did a gun with blanks end up firing something with a lethal round, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the answer to that question was tasked to your agency by the request of the County Board of Police Department, right?
Yes, sir.
And the same question then about at some point when the end of the interview when Chief Lewis was talking about vacuuming ammunition rounds and they couldn't hear something so it transitioned to a blank round. Again, you didn't ask him where that information was coming from, correct?
Again, this was asked by Supervisor Patrick Crow.
Okay, so he didn't ask anything as far as clarifying where that information would come from or why he would have any belief of that?
No.
Now, at the end of this, Special Agent Crow asked Chief Lewis, okay, would we be able to talk to you again if we need to? And Chief Lewis said, anytime you need, correct?
Yes, sir.
To your knowledge, did anybody from your agency between August 10th of 2016 and the date that he was charged with an offense go and speak to Chief Lewis about any further questions or evidence or accusations in this case?
No, sir.
To your knowledge, in between August 10th of 2016 to the date the state attorney charged Chief Lewis, did anybody from the state attorney's office go and interview him or ask him any questions about the accusations in this case?
I'm not aware of it.
Did the state attorney's office ever call you during that whole time frame, like you talked about in October, and say, well, why don't you call him and bring him in and let's go over these questions we have about a potential charge or anything like that?
By him, Chief Lewis?
Yes.
No, sir.
Were you part of any investigation at the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office department regarding digging up the ground at all?
Yes, sir.
Where was that?
That was at their firing range, their gun range, the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office gun range.
Did you make any determinations if there was a community event at the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office range that preceded this August 9th event at Punta Gorda by a few weeks?
Yes, sir.
Without going into any content, did your agency have any contact to interview, as part of this investigation, members of the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir.
Were those members part of the K-9 team?
Yes, sir.
Were any of those members in your investigation present at the August 9th event at the Punta Gorda Police Department?
No, sir.
There was a third box, no, I take it back. There were the two boxes of lasers that you put on the back of Nichols' vehicle, correct?
Yes, sir.
There were the 3 boxes of Winchesters that you put on the back of this box, trunk, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then there was 1 box marked Fiochi 380 blank ammunition, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, that Fiochi block, the 380 blank ammunition, would that be ammunition that would be consistent with a .38 revolver?
No, sir.
What kind of weapon would that go into?
That was a .380 caliber.
And what kind of gun would that fit?
It's a .380.
And that's different than a .38.
Yes, sir.
And in that one, how many rounds did you find in that box?
$15, sir.
What was the condition of that box, do you remember?
It appeared to be very old, sir.
Crunched up type of thing, falling apart a little bit?
Yeah, the condition was worn.
What was the condition of the wad cutter boxes?
Standard, fairly standard.
Were they in better condition than the Fiochi box?
Yes, sir.
What was the condition of the Blazer boxes? I mean, the Winchester Super X box?
Standard.
Is that a lot?
You may. Any redirects?
Yes, sir. Special Agent Nichols, you were asked by defense counsel about time that you went to the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office gun range and you said you dug up some of the ground there.
Yes, sir.
Did that pertain to your investigation involving Officer Cole?
Yes, sir.
Where at the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office gun range were you digging?
We were digging on top of the berm, which is the backstop to the gun range. In other words, you're firing the weapon towards the large berm.
Hill or mound, for lack of a word?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember how much earth you dug up? I mean, if you can estimate for us?
I don't have that report in front of me, but if I had to estimate, it was a 20 by 20 foot area, probably a foot in depth.
Did you do that by yourself, or did you have other people with you?
No, I had other people with me. I had Special Agent Supervisor Patrick Crow. We were both digging the area, and then Crime Scene Analyst Lee Dewey and Kate Reedy were sifting through what we dug up for projectiles or projectile fragments.
Were you able to find any laser wad cutter projectiles?
No, sir.
Any fragments of laser projectile that may have been consistent with a full projectile?
No, sir.
I think you have no other questions.
Sir, you may step down.
Thank you.
Parties approach. State, how do you wish to proceed?
State rests at this time.
Ladies and gentlemen, the state has rested their case. There's some preliminary matters, there's some matters that we need to address outside of your presence. I'm going to ask you now to go take a break, stretch your legs, and we'll bring you back as soon as we can. All right, you may be seated. Any motions?
Judge, in this case, the court will reverse the case law on it. The court's review of the felon is very charged. This is required to prove that must show that there was likely risk of death or great bodily injury. The testimony in this case is extremely similar to the testimony that the court looked at in both Bizima and both in Kish. Here's the evidence. Their own expert, that the court allowed to give expert opinion, said repeatedly on this question that it is not likely that a law enforcement officer will violate the law, not likely to lead to an act of death or great bodily harm, not suspected of very law enforcement. And the evidence in this case is without dispute that the second court is that Kitty Heck gave Nicole those wad cutters without the knowledge of Tom Lewis. There was no evidence saying that he was involved in that. He wasn't. That he then went and loaded the gun with them and used them, and we know he used them in this case because they were determined to be the bullets that were involved. The court has all the evidence on that. And that is what exposed Miss Norton to both the injury and the death, of which he had nothing to do with. The state would have to show you under Bizima, under Kish, under the term definition of culpable negligence that this report had accepted, that Chief Lewis knew or should have known that the event that was set up, because remember, they're not charged with these things that they've listed there, and the information is somehow this event itself was likely to cause death or great bodily harm. When the clear evidence in the case is that if everybody had done their job, of which he had a right to expect, this never happens. So you have to know going into this that people are not going to do their job. There has not been, even their own witness who said, well, I wouldn't have used, and I don't think you should use a gun that's capable of firing something in this. Repeatedly agreed, well, but you can use it safely. I wouldn't, but you can. Is FDLE training? This is the problem here in this case. FDLE itself, it is inherently dangerous to use a gun that fires blanks from a gun that could also fire a live round. Then FDLE would never approve the use of blanks at all, because that's the kind of gun that would come out of it. And so this issue the state's going, well, you could have used this, or should have used this, that's not what Azima and Fish talk about. They say, okay, if you want to say that there are better ways, other ways to do it, but what evidence have you heard in this case? Seriously, what evidence from any witness have you heard that this man here, when this went into this, knew or should have known that death or serious bodily harm is going to take place in this case? None. I mean, everybody has said the same thing on this. They've all said the same thing. You wouldn't expect the law clerk to be in this. Now you know the evidence. All these motions that we did was an issue, well, let's see what they show for safety and all this stuff. Here's the reality. They argued this whole time before about these motions, jury instructions, there wasn't a designated safety officer. Now you've heard the evidence. What's the evidence? Whether there's a designated safety officer or not, safety checks were undertaken in this case. They were undertaken. They were started. He can't control that when Jeff Woodard goes to go do the body stuff, the taser thing, the helmet, drives off scene, the gun is shown under the thing there, and Jeff Woodard doesn't go, and by the way, open up and let me look. He has a right to expect it being done. There has not been one piece of evidence in this case that shows that he didn't have a right to expect that was being done, or that he didn't think it was being done, or that he didn't want it to be done, or that he disregarded, that recklessly disregarded human life. And I understand on JOH usually, because we know the standards of this, that there's just like, well, let's take it in the light and we'll say we're really safe. But I would point to what Azima pointed out in that case. And Azima went right straight to one thing. And they said, here was the testimony. Testimony, that was the doctor with the IUD and the pregnancy. And the testimony was there a risk by doing this? The lawyer said, yes. Okay? Same question as the state asked. Was it possible an officer did not follow the policy? That was one of the things they asked. That's not the standard. But when it came time to ask the question, of which they have a duty to show you at this point, they have a duty to show you, they never ask the question. The reason they don't ask the question is because they can't get the answer. Why I ask the question? Is it likely? Is this likely to lead to death? We know it's likely to death or great bodily harm based on an officer doing what the officer did in this case. No, that's not likely to lead to death. Their own experts. We went over the points of this case, and that's what you have to reflect. Not just nebulous, well, in some case, if somebody ever put something in or did something and did it, that's not what Azima says. It talks about under the, and it says it on those cases of culpable negligence, under the totality of facts of your case, not this global. In your case, was there any evidence showing the defendant knew or should have known death or serious bodily injury was going to take place? Or in this case, exposed to it. What have they shown you? Katie Hector to stand up here, and she tried to say this before. She tried to say, oh no, there was nothing designated as safety. It was like pulling teeth, but we got it out, and she goes, well, of course I've got people in there with the safety rules. And eventually, she said, the reason I put Chief Lewis and the training person is I knew between them, one of them would be doing presentation, and one of them would be doing what? Safety. Did she type in next to her on like, word perfect or word? No, she didn't. But she knew that the reason we're doing it is for safety. So the whole premise when we started this was, no one's designated. And part of the motion for the court denied is, and the court wrote, well, if nobody really did anything to cover safety here, then at this point the court can't do this. Okay, I understand, because you hadn't heard all the testimony yet. But you sat through 3 days of testimony now at this point, and you have yet to hear one witness say to this court that Tom Lewis knew or should have known that death was about to happen here or serious bodily injury was about to happen. This idea that their only witness who makes any statement about using a gun that's capable of live ammunition, he makes that statement in reference to his opinion. But he also then tells this court, like Azima noted when it reversed the conviction, he tells the court that that's not likely to take place. It's possible, but it's not likely. That's the testimony. So with Azima, you can look one to the other there and say, well, the expert in Azima said, could that have caused the woman a problem by doing this? Yes. Was it likely or a high risk of it? No. And the second DCA said, reverse. That's not culpable negligence. That's, you argue negligence. Right? In this case, it's the same thing. And not that he controls the case, but he's like their closest person to try and say anything like that. And even he said, well, I wouldn't do it, but I agree that it's not likely that an officer is going to load a live round in it. It's not likely an officer is going to violate his training and policy. It's not likely. He has a right to expect people are going to follow the law. So, with that, what other evidence do they have that he supposedly knows going into this to raise the criminal liability, that he's a criminal when it starts, because that's how it has to be. He has to be a criminal when this thing starts, because everything's done at that point. Everything's done as far as who's doing what, who's doing this, or he's got to be a criminal some point through it. So what do we have here? Well, this is the evidence the court has. Jeff Woodard goes and undertakes complete safety check responsibility. Chris Salzman tells you on here, I was completely prepared to do all of this, which he has a right to expect. And he says, the only reason I didn't do this is that Jeff Woodard said he's going to go do it. So then what do people watch? They watch Jeff Woodard sit there with simunitions. He brings them to vault. They do the sim gun check, all of that. They bring it out to the chief out there. Here's another thing. How are they going to get past JOA on the element of reckless disregard for human life, safety, welfare, gross, flagrant? Okay, it's not enough to go, well, we don't agree with what happened. Of course, they go, you know what, someone looking at this could think that's gross and flagrant and whatever. How are we getting away with that when he's the one, they bring evidence out, that he starts telling Mary Knowlton how to do things and to be safe? And I gave you that case before that dealt with gross negligence, which is less than culpable negligence. That said, hey, if people try and do safety measures, but they just don't end up being enough, if that happened, then that's not culpable negligence, because they made an effort for safety. It's the same reason we started off with the information when it said insufficient safety protocol. So they changed it. Well, we're left with that right now. You don't have to move forward on the case at all when every piece of evidence that you've heard of there is that safety things were happening. Here's the difference. Would we be here if Jeff Woodard said, yeah, I looked in and I thought they were blanks? I mean, is that one fact what made him a criminal? Because Jeff Woodard did everything else. And when it came to that, and he should have done that for the checks or at least asked, it would not have even mattered. And that's the second part of the JOA. When you're reviewing this for a JOA, you have to review the totality and circumstances of this case. Not somebody one day could put a bullet in and shoot. You have to do it for this case. And in this case, their own safety officer has said to you, even if I looked, I would not have picked this up. Their own witnesses have said, wad cutters are not known in this mid-'80s, early '90s. Again, this is not a civil trial. This is not negligence. How does that absence of something that basically, as I said earlier, defeats all safety checks by what Lee Cole brought in, didn't even read the box. How does that make him a criminal when the people, it's not like you had like a 1-year guy out there checking stuff. You had a 15-year vet. You had an 18-year vet. That were the training officers out there looking at that. You had Katie Edgar, 10 years, giving a box he's going to read. So you don't have something where he goes on putting in people that don't know what they're doing. You've got all these people doing checks on a particular type of bullet, but nobody in this group would have even known. So how do we make the jump then, that in this case, Chief Lewis has done something wrong to the level of reckless disregard for human life, when Lee Cole has introduced something that the safety checks themselves could not catch? And that's significant here. That's exactly, when you look at this case, why the state should never be able to proceed at this point and go forward, because they cannot show that anything in here, even the light most favorable to them, that there's something here that somebody could go, well, this was reckless disregard for human life. Because the very people tasked with checking couldn't find it. That's Lee Cole's doing. They charged Lee Cole. They can run that case all day long. But this case, as if he's supposed to have something to protect against a bullet that his own men, through all this experience, said, I don't know, that their own expert says, yeah, these things were phased out. And somehow we're going to put criminal responsibility on him because he delegated people to do their job, and there were failures of other people that broke law, policy, and according to state law, that caused this. Okay? Jeff Woodard did the safety checks. He just didn't look at the gun. That's not his fault. He's got an expectation they're going to look at the gun. But even if he had looked at the gun, he told you, I wouldn't have known. Chris Salzman told you, I wouldn't have known. We've never seen this thing before. He didn't do that. If they had a case, Judge, where somehow in the beginning he was in the Katie Heck role, okay, different story. And he knows what he's saying. Oh my gosh, Judge, he didn't read it either. Look at this, the chief giving him something. That didn't happen. He has nothing to do with that. And so they scheduled this thing. There's nothing about the history of it, that there was a prior event where a live bullet went off and hit somebody and you still went and did this. Those are the things that culpable negligence and reckless disregard for life deal with. You've got a guy who's the chief that sets up an event, that has the proper personnel there. This written designated safety is a red herring, because now you know in this case, the testimony you've heard is they were doing the safety checks. That simulation was checked in and out. Jeff Woodard went over and didn't let Lee Cole go, I'll just wrap it around my neck. Safety check, you're getting the mask. Safety check, I made sure your gun's on a Glock, he just doesn't look. So in this case, we're going to proceed and let a jury consider whether he's a criminal, because Lee Cole introduces something that experienced men and women of that agency, upon checking, even if they had checked, would have still said it looks like a blank. We're going to criminalize it when he has a policy. All this stuff before we know his motion, they said there was no policy, no policy. Now you know there is. There is a policy. It's called don't get ammo that we don't give you or approve. It's very simple. He has that there. So he's sitting there and has a right to think, I have a policy that I don't have to worry about ammo coming in this way. I bought this guy blanks that I know don't have a projectile. I bought it for him in February. And I've done all these things, and we have one more policy here that every witness has said. Don't shoot. Universal across the board. You don't have one person that says, no, he should have been reasonably known that it was likely that Lee Cole is going to aim this gun and shoot at Mary Knowlton. You don't have one witness saying that. They all say the same thing, including our own expert. How he pointed is against the rules. So, if we're going to say to a person, you know what, we're okay with you being called a criminal, despite the fact you had rules in place that would have prevented this particular case. Something. Because the bottom line is there are the only two rules that were in there to just follow were not here. So what did he do? What did he do? He didn't write down designated safety officer, but they made safety checks. That's what matters. Safety checks did not cause Lee Cole to bring in a lot cutter. Safety checks did not cause Lee Cole to point it. The first aid thing they put in the information from the fire department, that didn't cause it. How about the thing in the information? Knowingly allowed. Well, now you know that's not true at all. There wasn't one person that testified that Tom Lewis knowingly allowed the gun to be pointed at Mary Knowlton. Everybody testified the rules are that's not what you're supposed to do. That he makes them, the agency makes them sign. He will not point it. He will treat it as loaded. So all these things they listed they can't even show. Certainly can't show that this man here did not care what happened to people that now this court knows. This court knows that he knows them all. And now you've seen the video where he's standing with them. So the idea in this case that the evidence somehow is going to go forward to let a jury consider if he's guilty of something, when he himself, if there were live rounds in that gun, and he should have known there were live rounds, or reasonably should have known there were live rounds, then he put himself right there to be hit also. And that doesn't make any sense, because that's not what happened. So I do think, I understand in most cases JOAs, well, my most favorable, we move on. But Azima and Kish are instructive. You've got to, at the end of the day on this case, when you look at this from your position as a judge, go, do I see something here that shows that Tom Lewis, the person, knew or should have known that death or search by is likely? When Lee Cole brought in wad cutters that the safety guys don't even know, and then Lee Cole aimed that gun. That's how it happened. Not because they did something wrong within the agency that way. And even if there's something that is in the agency there, you still have to do a JOA comparative to negligence. Which means, because this is the statute, it's kind of weird this way. It's like, well, there can be acts that didn't happen, but if they don't rise to this, they're negligent. And that's part of this. So I would implore the court, in Azima and Kish, you are absolutely justified, I think it's absolutely legally correct, that in this evidence presented, there's not one person or one piece of evidence or anything that's come out that has shown that Tom Lewis knew death was likely or reasonably should have known death was likely. He can't know death's likely under these facts because he doesn't know about the wad cutter and he doesn't know Lee Cole from the film. And the last thing I'll tell you is this. All of this talk about you used a gun that fired live, that could fire live ammo. That is exactly what Azima addressed. The fact that the gun possibly, if used by somebody wrong, could do that does not rise to the level of culpable negligence. And what evidence do you have here besides this theoretical or possibly that could happen? When FDLE itself, which doesn't distinguish between the death of an officer or an officer in training and a civilian. It says blanks are safe to use if used properly. What evidence do we have in here that the use of a gun properly to fire a blank, which he has a right to expect, which their own expert says he has a right to expect, which the court knows he has a right to expect? What evidence here do they have that somehow beyond that he knew that this something was going to be done forward? And so for those around there, I do think this case should be, unfortunately, on the judgment of acquittal. Yet, if the state is the light most favorable, but even in the light most favorable, what do they have to even begin to say he knew or should have known death was likely? They don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state is requesting that the court deny the defendant's motion for judgment of acquittal. The standard is the light most favorable to the non-moving party. The state states that the fourth prima facie case of culpable negligence for the court to send this case to a jury. The evidence in this case shows that the defendant is the chief of police. He's a long-time trained law enforcement officer. He's even a firearms instructor himself. He is someone who is trained in how to properly use firearms and use safety. He authorized this shoot-don't-shoot scenario that I know that the court has heard much about to be performed for the guests, the Chamber of Commerce guests. He himself invited the chamber for this evening. He contacted John Wright, from the president of the group, and invited his group. There's evidence that he designed or was instrumental in the implementation of this scenario that was found on the internet and implemented at the police department when he was the captain of operations previously, and then that scenario continued forward when he became the chief. It was done several times when he was captain and also when he was chief. The evidence again suggests that it was implemented by him or with his involvement certainly at the police department. There were no written rules, no safety procedures, there was no guidance, there were no policies pertaining specifically to a shoot-don't-shoot scenario where an officer would be picking up a firearm and firing it And there is some evidence that he was to direct the weapon towards Mary Knowlton. It came from Lieutenant Salzman. I know he said on the stand, it was yesterday for the first time, he says, well, it was supposed to be shot towards the ground. Of course, on August 10th, in his statement to FDLE, he says it's supposed to be directed towards her. When I questioned him about that, he says something to the effect, well, it was supposed to be displayed to her. Something to scare her in this short distance between those two patrol cars, enough to get her to shoot back, or not shoot back. Something to scare her, to get her attention. That's the scenario that this defendant helped design and walked her out into. There, again, are no rules, there's no guidance. He doesn't have a firearms instructor there to assist, to work as a handler, or to be there in case of any emergency. There was a firearms instructor besides the defendant. There was another one inside the building at the time. And I know the defense's argument, well, Lee Cole defeated all safety checks, but wouldn't it be nice to at least have someone try, at least have your most trained officers out there to at least double check, just in case they can identify wad cutters? He was involved in every single stage. He invited them, he welcomed them. He's all over the itinerary. Every single stage he does the welcome, he does a tour group, he does the static displays, as you can see in the photos. He's answering questions. Jeff Woodard, his captain of operations, comes to him several times for direction. Chief, do we want to keep this moving along? He's in charge of running the time. He's not designated as safety officer. I know it can be argued that he volunteered or stepped in to get this ammunitions weapon. He goes to the chief, his boss. He's the number 2 or 3. He goes to his boss and says, do you want me, we need to move this along. The rain is coming in. And the chief tells him, where are my participants for this scenario? Let's get them. I got him here. He goes, he prepares this ammunitions weapon. He checks it visually. He has Detective DeVault check it, and Detective DeVault's not assigned to that, but Jeff Woodard grabs him. Detective DeVault checks it, and then as we know later on, as they bring Mary Knowlton out, he hands the magazine over to Chief Lewis, and Chief Lewis checks it. So you have 3 checks on this ammunitions weapon, the safer weapon. Not the real gun, but the safe weapon, we have 3 checks on. We don't have any checks on the live firearm. He is active in every single stage. That morning at a staff meeting, he assigned his officers to roles. It wasn't Katie Heck who sent out an email with an itinerary that they've used for years. It was him assigning people to roles. He sent Mary Knowlton. He was standing there. He was the last stage of that. He sent her in there with Jeff Woodard. And you see on the video, Jeff Woodard's 20 feet away or so. The chief is right there. There was some rush in making this happen because the storm was coming. Those were the defendant's decisions to continue. He authorized or knew that an officer was using a live firearm, obviously not live rounds, but a live firearm that was capable of chambering live rounds. Firearms, as the court knows, are inherently dangerous and lethal. He knew that this would be done for a better effect. That previously they had used munitions weapons, and when some of the participants wore the helmets, they couldn't hear. The bangs weren't loud enough. So they decided to go and use real guns to shoot blank rounds for the effect, for the impact. He knows this. That's in his statement. He knows this on August 9th. And again, there is no reason for a real gun to be used. That has nothing to do with safety. That's purely entertainment. Let's make it as realistic as possible. And if you're going to do that, you need to have someone check and make sure they are in fact rounds. Because obviously it's dangerous if you're using live rounds. He did not provide Mary Knowlton with any sort of protective gear at all. As the court has seen, Lee Cole is covered up from head to toe. He has a protective face shield on so his throat, his eyes aren't hit by these detergent pellets. The court's heard testimony that the detergent pellets themselves are dangerous, and that's why he was covered up. And of course, Mary Knowlton, even though they have helmets there, Chodakowski's holding a helmet on the side, they don't bother to give her anything, nothing at all. He doesn't check Officer Cole's weapon himself. He doesn't assign Woodard to do it. He doesn't assign Salzman to do it. Nobody is assigned. Nobody knows what their roles are. And you're using a real gun. It's so dangerous. You have to have someone specifically checking. You can't just say, let's hope Lee Cole gets it right, because we see the results when he doesn't. There's no protective gear. There is evidence that the members of the Chamber of Commerce didn't even know that Lee Cole had a gun. And the testimony from Tom Lewis's statement and also Lieutenant Salzman is that it was supposed to be a surprise. Lee Cole was supposed to pick up the gun, draw, and fire a couple of rounds to surprise her. And there's evidence that the member of the chamber members, they don't even know what they're participating in. They don't even know what they're watching. They have no idea that Officer Cole is going to be firing a gun. Again, he supervised it. He was present. He participated. He was there every single stage. He set these dangerous conditions in motion. And it is the totality of all the evidence that showed that the defendant exposed her to personal injury by culpable negligence. If I may approach, Your Honor, I have a couple of cases I'd like to present the court.
You may.
And I'll provide defense counsel copies of those as well. There are two cases. The first is Montañez versus State. It is 24 Southern 3rd, 799. It's the second DCA case. And I provided that case just simply for the proposition, Your Honor. I know the court knows firearms are inherently dangerous, and I believe that's stated on top of page 3 of the opinion. And it ironically states that because firearms are inherently dangerous, their usage is best left to well-trained individuals who have a duty to serve and protect. We know guns are dangerous. We know officers should be properly trained and should handle them safely. The second case I provided, which is more instructed to the court, is McMullen versus State, 444 Southern 2nd, 1063. This is a first DCA case from 1984. That case involved a shooting death where the defendant in that case failed to check to see if his gun was loaded. The gun was then fired, and the defendant there killed a friend of his. And the court noted at the bottom of page 2 in that opinion that there is no question that the deliberate act of pointing a gun at another human being amounts to an act in utter disregard for the safety of others. The court noted that the defendant set the stage for the tragedy which ultimately followed, and it noted that it was an accidental shooting where the defendant had no intention of killing. And I would submit that that's similar to what we have in this case. I understand it's a step removed because he is not in fact the shooter. However, the state's position is that this defendant helped set these events into motion. Officer Cole was either directed or allowed, or it was supposed to be that he would direct that firearm in Mary Knowlton's direction and fire a couple of rounds. I'm not suggesting directly at her, but that gun was not pointed in a safe direction. That's how it was supposed to work. It's the way it always worked. Chief Lewis knew about this. He had done the scenario in the past. He implemented it. It's shown by the defendant's testimony. Again, firing a couple of rounds to surprise her, and Lieutenant Salzman's testimony specifically, the same words, but also that it would be pointed at some point in her direction. And this case is utterly reckless. It's dangerous. It shows a flagrant disregard for the safety of others and for human life. And the state's position is that it has met the elements of culpable negligence based on the totality of the evidence presented in the case.
Okay, I understand, as defense counsel indicated, this is not your typical misdemeanor DUI, or JOA argument. Therefore, I am going to take a recess to review the cases that the state had provided me. I'm going to re-review Azima, and I will be back shortly with my decision on the JOA.
Can I just address the case they gave that just sitting out on the court?
I'll read it.
All rise. Court stands at recess.
Do you want me to proceed without Mr. Domrit?
Yeah, we can see.
I can give him a couple minutes. Thought y'all told me they were here. They're looking for him now, Your Honor. All right, let me know when the state's ready.
Your Honor, we can proceed. I'm fine.
You sure?
I'm fine, yeah.
Okay. Well, the court in reviewing the information, and especially the standard jury instruction, which we have had a lot of pretrial litigation about, to prove the crime of culpable negligence, the state must prove the following two elements: the defendant, and then there's an A or a B. The state chose to file simply exposed a victim to personal injury. There's been a lot of motions practice about what culpable negligence is based upon the definitions and the differing definitions in the law. The standard culpable negligence definition says, I will now define culpable negligence for you. Each of us has a duty to act reasonably toward others. If there is a violation of that duty without any conscious intention to harm, that violation is negligence. But culpable negligence is more than a failure to use ordinary care for others. In order for the negligence to be culpable, it must be gross and flagrant. Culpable negligence is a course of conduct showing reckless disregard for human life or the safety of persons exposed to its dangerous effects, or such an entire want of care as to raise a presumption of a conscious indifference to consequences, or which shows wantonness or recklessness or a grossly careless disregard for the safety and welfare of the public, or shows such an indifference to the rights of others as is equivalent to an intentional violation of such rights. As I indicated earlier, based upon Azima, the Second District Court of Appeals, which is still good law, it also, the second DCA, which this court is bound to follow, says, the court has defined culpable negligence as consciously doing an act which a reasonable person would know is likely to result in death or great bodily harm to another person, even though done without any intent to injure. The facts have made clear that this event did, in fact, result in the death of a person, which we can't ignore. So then what we look at is, did the evidence show that it was conscious with regard to what this defendant himself did? And the evidence shows, albeit disputed by defense, that there was no safety protocol. There were certain situations that occurred between multiple people of the Punta Gorda Police Department that caused this unfortunate event. So with what has been provided in the light most favorable to the state, it is not up to the court to decide whether these actions are gross and flagrant on behalf of the defendant here. It is enough for the jury to decide whether it's gross and flagrant on what he knew or did not know at the time of this event. So for that purpose, for now, I am denying the judgment of acquittal. It's 3:30. How do we wish to proceed? Do you want to approach? bring out the jury? Thank you.
Your Honor, are you ready?
I am.
Great.
Thank you. You may be seated. In defense, how do you wish to proceed?
The defense would call on James.
Stand here, face up front to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony given in this class will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
This way, please. Just watch your step.
Just make sure I speak in the mic.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir. Could you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
James B. Nichols,
Mr. Nichols, where are you employed?
the Punta Gorda Police Department.
What's your position there?
I am a captain in charge of the reserve unit.
Can you tell the jury your history in law enforcement?
I started in law enforcement in 1987 and up until today. I started at the Punta Gorda Police Department in 87. I went out to the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office in 1990. I retired from the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office in 2008 and came back to the Punta Gorda Police Department, and I've been there since.
Can you tell the jury your history of involvement as far as the canine officer and training canine officers?
I started in K-9 in 1987. I became the trainer for the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office K-9s in 1991, and I continued that until my retirement in 2008. I'm also a national judge, which means that I certify K-9s for the United States Police Canine Association. I'm a past national president for 6 years, also a past national secretary. I'm currently the Southwest Vice President for the state of Florida for the United States Police Canine Association.
What is the United States Police Canine Association?
It is the largest and oldest certifying organization of police canine teams in the United States.
You trained canine officers before?
Yes, sir. I trained all the canine officers at Charlotte County from the time that I got there, either in narcotics or in patrol work for my entire career out there.
Does your training include also training on how to handle blanks?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. And you certified canine officers?
Yes, sir, I do.
Tell the jury what that means.
The state requires that the canine officers go through a 400-hour course. That's an FDLE course. It's mandated by the state. They also require that they have certifications. They either do a state certification or they do a USPCA certification. Either certification is good for the state. During that certification, they do multitudes of things. They do search work, they do obedience, and they also do apprehension work. The apprehension work they do is with and without gunfire. By that I mean that you use a handgun and blanks to make a loud noise to see what the dog's going to do. You also use it when he's doing obedience to see if he's under control, that he doesn't just go crazy and come after you when you fire off a loud noise around him. But for the apprehension with gunfire, there's 2 rounds fired, and the decoy runs, and the dog makes the apprehension.
Have you done or overseen demonstration for community events where a gun that's capable of firing both a live projectile and a blank is used?
Yes, sir. In my career, I've done probably over 2,000 canine demonstrations. Probably over half of those have been with firearms.
And the blanks that are used in canine training, again, those are blanks that are intended not to shoot a projectile, a dog, or a person, is that right?
Correct, yes, sir.
Have you conducted seminars on canine training and use?
Yes, sir, I have.
Have you been qualified as an expert to testify on canine issues and training?
Yes, sir, I have.
Should at this time move to have Captain Nichols qualified as an expert in canine training?
Sustained.
Approach.
You may.
Over 2,000, over how many years have you done the 2,000 demos?
30.
In those 30 years of doing the 2,000 demos, and you said about half of those are used with guns with blanks, capable firing live rounds also?
Yes, sir.
In those 30 years that you've been involved in, have you been involved in anywhere anybody was injured by a blank?
No, sir, I have not.
Are blanks safe if they're used properly?
Yes, sir, they are.
Tell me three about that.
Blanks are just, it's a projectile with no bullet in it, no lead. It's got gunpowder in it and primer. It also has usually a cardboard filling to keep the primer or the from coming out of the bullet. And it's fired when we're doing demos or any kind of certification. The gun is held at arm's length, pointed straight to the ground, and that's where it's fired. There is no projectile in it to come out.
And when you say it's pointed down, can I ask you to stand up, please?
You may.
When you say you're firing the gun down in canine training or demonstrations, where's your arm basically?
Straight down.
Do you ever put your arm straight up or aim it in front?
No, sir, never.
I see. You train canine officers to do that, are they trained not to ever point the gun with the blank at anybody?
Correct.
Training canine officers, the canine officers taught the responsibility of loading and safely using their weapons is their responsibility.
Yes, sir, they are.
Does the United States Police Canine Association have a rule or policy requiring two officers to check a blank gun?
No, sir, they do not.
In demos with the public that you have done, is there a policy or anything written as to how the officers in the demonstration with a blank gun have to check their gun?
No, sir, there isn't.
Where is the responsibility of that in one of those demonstrations?
Responsibility lies with the officers that are using the weapons.
Describe to the jury, would you please, what the difference is visually between a, let's say, a 38 blank and a 38 with a projectile?
A projectile, which is a bullet, has a lead top, and it sticks outside the casing. And a blank has no top. It looks like a empty shell casing till you look in it. Usually, in my experience, there's like a white cap on top of it. It's either cardboard or some type of material to keep the packing down in it. And then the bullet, of course, has a bullet on top of it.
Your training experience in 30 years with K9, let me ask you this. Is it, with a properly trained officer, is it likely to confuse a projectile on a 38 bullet with a blank?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
When you train an officer on blanks, are they trained to recognize the difference between a blank and a projectile with a bullet on it?
Yes, sir.
And so, when an officer is certified as a canine officer, in your experience and training of doing this, should they be able to distinguish easily between a blank and a bullet with a projectile on it?
Yes, sir, they should.
Do you know Lee Cole?
Yes, sir, I do.
And how do you know him?
He worked at the Punta Gorda Police Department.
Who certified him as proficient in canine use for the USPCA?
I was one of the judges that certified him, yes, sir.
You certify that he, let me ask you, do you know that he knows how to properly use a blank gun then?
Yes, sir, I've observed him use one.
And when you've observed him use one, have you seen him properly aim a blank gun?
Yes, sir, I have.
And when he's aimed a blank gun, what direction has he aimed it when he's safely using it?
At the ground.
Besides certifying him, when you certify other canine officers, has Lee Cole participated as a member of that certification process and working with you to certify somebody else?
He has acted as a decoy.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I mean, he's not doing, I understand, he's not doing the certification, but he serves a role in that process?
Correct, yes, sir.
Tell the jury what that process is when you're certifying.
When you do apprehension work with gunfire, you have a decoy that stands approximately 20 yards from where the dog and the handler are. He walks out, he faces the dog and handler, he has a sleeve on to protect himself from the dog. He fires 2 rounds, he turns and runs. The dog makes the apprehension. The handler then goes down, outs the dog or tells him to let go of the arm or wherever he bites. He comes back to a sit position and they finish the exercise.
And so you have observed Lee Cole go from the position of how he works with his dog, and you've observed him playing the role of a guy that fires the gun and the dog goes and attacks.
Yes, sir.
And what are they dressed in, by the way, when the dog attacks them?
You're usually wearing your BDU uniform, the bottoms, usually wear a sweatshirt on top. The sweatshirt is to cover the sleeve so that the dog doesn't just see the jute sleeve and know that's what he's coming after.
Do they have a bodysuit that protects them from the bite?
Just the sleeve, sir.
And that's
Yes,
the dog
that's it.
bite?
Yes, sir.
Do canine officers ever train with wad cutters?
No, sir, they do not.
Are you familiar with a wad cutter?
Yes, sir, I am.
And how are you familiar with a wad cutter?
I'm old enough to have fired wad cutters when I started my career.
Are wad cutters used by the Punta Gorda Police Department?
No, sir, they're not.
Are they used by the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office?
No, sir, they're not.
Would you agree with me, or let me ask you this, have officers in, let's say, the last 20 years, is wad cutter part of the law enforcement culture of their training over the last 20 years or so?
I don't believe it would be.
Is there any reason in far as the training or the job of a canine officer that a canine officer would need to possess wad cutters?
None.
How does a wad cutter appear compared to a .38 blank used by a canine officer?
It could appear very similar. The only difference is that a wad cutter has lead down in the casing of the shell, whereas a wad cut or a blank does not.
The box that blanks come in, you've seen those before?
Yes, sir.
You've used them regularly in your training and use as canine?
Yes, sir.
Box that are blanks are marked with blanks, correct?
Yes, sir, they are.
What type of things on a wad cutter box? Have you seen wad cutter boxes?
Yes, sir.
And what type of marking on a wad cutter box which identify that it is not a blank?
Well, it wouldn't say blank on it. And secondly, it would have the grain, the weight of the bullet that's being loaded.
And is the term grain, as far as weight of the bullet, a common term within law enforcement?
Yes, sir, it is.
Is there a different weight between a .38 blank and a .38 wad cutter?
Yes, sir, because there's no bullet in a blank, so there would be a difference in weight if you held it.
Which one would be heavier?
The wad cutter.
And the only way that, I guess, that you would know that is if you had a blank in one hand and a wad.
Objection, leading Your Honor.
Sustained.
In order to do that comparison, what would you need to do as far as the different weights?
Hold one in each hand.
The Punta Gorda Police Department has policies about use of ammo, correct?
Yes, sir, they do.
And if an officer wanted to bring any type of ammo to the department to have it reviewed, the department's available to do that, correct?
Correct.
In fact, if an officer wants to use an ammo that's different or not issued or not previously approved to them by the department, there's a process that's set up where they can have that done.
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Is there a process where that can be done?
Yes, sir, there is.
I'm not sure what that process is.
It'd be taken to the armory, and then an armorer would check the ammo, and they would decide whether or not it could be issued out and used.
Is any officer permitted to inquire about ammunition that they would like to further investigate, inspect, or use?
Yes.
You mean? Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You said you've done over 2,000 canine demonstrations, and half of those have been with firearms.
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
Okay, what do you mean by canine demonstrations?
Where you go out and do demonstrations for schools or things like that, where you do obedience routines, you do gunfire. Kids really like to see guns go off and the dogs chase, that type of thing.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I've done a lot of demos with drug dogs also, which does not have any gunfire.
The ones with gunfire, when does a citizen come into play?
We don't use citizens when we do demonstrations.
The canine demonstrations you're talking about aren't very similar to the shoot, don't shoot scenario from August.
No, ma'am, they're not.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you to take a look at these for me real quick. State's Exhibit 122 and State's Exhibit 128. Now, dealing with your testimony about how wad cutters and blanks aren't something that are really taught anymore, correct?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
So I believe your testimony was that we don't see them much anymore, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, so by looking at them, you look at them that way,
Yes, ma'am.
is that pretty clearly identifiable to you? One's a blank and one is not?
To me, yes, because I know what they both look like.
Okay.
I mean, they're both flat, which means that there's no projectile sticking out.
Okay, but you can clearly see a projectile in there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the other one, you can see that there's a piece of cardboard recessed in it, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and if you put one in each hand, the blank definitely feels lighter.
Correct.
In the 2,500 demos, or I'm sorry, the over 2,000 demos that you've done, have you ever had a safety officer?
No, ma'am, we have not. When you say safety officer, are you speaking specifically, or as all the canine officers or safety officers that are there?
Okay, and again, you don't actually use any kind of civilians or other human beings involved, correct?
Correct.
back in August of 2016, who was in charge of the armory?
I believe it was Lieutenant Chris Salzman.
Okay. And approximately about 2-3 weeks ago, you and Lieutenant Salzman, along with Tom Lewis, took a trip to Clearwater to meet with Mr. Romine, correct?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Can you redirect?
Tell the jury why civilians in a canine demonstration aren't used when you're doing demos with the dogs.
Well, because you don't want civilians out there with the dogs, because the dogs are trained to make apprehensions, and they're trained to pay attention to their handlers. When someone gets out there that doesn't know anything about dogs, you could have problems.
In the shoot-don't-shoot scenario, the use of the blank is for what purpose?
Noise.
Is a shoot-don't-shoot scenario with a civilian in which a blank is used to make the noise, if used safely, a safe event for a civilian?
Yes, very safe.
When, by the way, when I actually called you to speak to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I asked if at some point you could speak with me at my office, and you agreed to do so.
Yes, sir.
When I spoke to you at my office, did I force you to be there? Did anybody else force you to be there?
No, sir.
Did I do anything to tell you what to say or what to do?
No, sir, you did not.
And did I speak to you alone in my conference room as far as what your testimony may or may not be?
Yes.
Now, in this case here, were you ever interviewed by FDLE?
No, sir, I was not.
Were you ever interviewed by anybody from the State Attorney's Office investigators?
No, sir, I was not.
But on that night of this incident, were you there at any point?
Yes, sir, I was.
And tell the jury as far as when you were there, at what point you were on the scene.
I was not part of the scenarios, so I was not there that evening. I was at a gymnastics class for my 5-year-old granddaughter. I was called by Lieutenant Salzman, who said there had been an accident and the chief would like me to respond to the police department. I went to the police department. I notified the chief that I was there, and then I sat with Officer Lee Cole because we didn't really want him sitting by himself in a room. And then I escorted him in to speak to the chief in one of the captain's offices.
And was a decision made that Officer Lee Cole was going to be leaving that night to Punta Gorda Police Department and going to his office?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Well, what did you do with Officer Lee Cole from the point of the Punta Gorda Police Department if you left at any time?
I took him and his dog to his residence.
And how long do you believe time-wise that you were with Officer Cole?
Probably around an hour and a half.
And did anybody at all, in any capacity, ever go to interview about what happened in that hour and a half?
No, sir, they did not.
So you may step down. Defense, call your next witness.
That's called Charlotte County Deputy Justin Gilmore.
You can stand here, face the court, and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony given in this class will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Just right, please. Just watch your step on the stairs.
You may make sure to speak into the microphone.
Okay.
You may inquire.
Good afternoon. Could you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
I am Deputy Justin Gilmer, Charlotte County Sheriff's Office.
And Deputy Gilmer, how long have you worked for the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office?
Since December of 2009.
Did you go through the police academy?
Yes, I did.
Certified every year in how to use your firearm?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury where you're assigned to right now in the Sheriff's Office?
I'm assigned to the K-9 unit
And how long have you been in the K-9 unit?
for 2.5 years, working a dual-purpose dog. Before that, I worked a single-purpose drug dog.
Explain to the jury what a single-purpose dog is and a dual-purpose dog.
Dual purposes is patrol and narcotics. Before, I just worked a narcotics dog. She didn't bite or do any of that other work.
Narcotics dogs then are the ones that you see sniffing around the car.
Right.
And the patrol dogs are the ones that
Do physical apprehensions, tracking, biting, things like that.
release the illegal blood.
Right.
Let me call your attention to July 26, 2016. Were you on duty that day?
Yes.
And tell the jury what was going on at the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office on July 26, 2016 as far as the K-9 unit. Let's start with training.
Right. That was our unit training day. We meet twice a month, the first and last Tuesday, or typically the first and fourth Tuesday of every month, to do our training. So we were actually doing training and a community policing demo.
So, I understand that the day started with training of the K-9 group,
Right. At 3 o'clock.
and then that was going to be followed with a community presentation.
Correct.
So tell the jury basically what's involved with the training part that you're doing.
Starting at 3. Usually we meet at the office to start with, and then we move on to doing, typically we start with drugs or narcotics training. So we'll do a couple of hides, run our dogs around that. It was kind of a thrown-off day because we knew we had a community policing demo later that afternoon, so we had to cut stuff short and get over there and get ready for that.
Do you know who Lee Cole is?
Yes, I do.
And how do you know Lee Cole?
He was assigned to start training with us for a while. That's really how I met him, was through training.
And so on July 26, 2016, was he present for this training session with the Sheriff's Office?
Yes, he was.
Did he train with you guys that day?
Yes, he did.
And did he then participate in the community presentation demonstration you put on by the Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
Now, tell the jury what kind of gun Lee Cole used that day.
I just remember it as a small silver revolver.
Was it a gun that your agency that day had given to him?
No.
So he brought his own gun?
Correct.
The demonstration that was going to go on that day, was the public invited to it?
Yes.
Okay. And approximately how many people out in the public showed up for it?
I'm not real sure, maybe 15, 20. There's not a whole lot of these things, just a couple.
And they're in a position where they can see you doing whatever's going to happen with the dogs and the guns and that type of
Right.
thing. In the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office, let me ask you this, when you go to put these community presentations on, you know you're going to be using guns that fire blanks, correct?
Yes.
And the guns that fire blanks, if somebody wanted to, they could put in a projectile round also.
Sustained.
Tell the jury what the guns were as far as what the guns are capable of firing, whether blank or projectile.
You're talking about the blank guns we currently, our agency has? Now or then? Then we had a 357 blank gun. So it can fire a live round.
And so would that be used then in public demonstrations?
Yes, our 357 would, yes.
The gun that Lee Cole had there, were you aware at the time that his gun, like your 357?
Sustained.
Did you see Lee Cole's gun?
Yes, I saw him walking around with it, yes.
And were you aware if it could fire both blanks and a live projectile with the head on?
I wasn't aware, but I would assume that it could.
Okay. And was he permitted to use that gun during the demonstration?
Yes.
Now, prior to the public demonstration with the public, did there come an incident where anything happened with Lee Cole's gun?
We were sitting around, I'm not sure what you're referring to. You talk.
Did he do any, did there come an occasion where his gun would have been fired?
Oh, yeah,
before the
okay,
demonstration?
yes, he test fired one round prior to anybody really getting there, showing up.
Okay. And why did that happen?
I'm not exactly sure why it happened. I think he said something about having a new round, and he was, you know.
Sustained.
All right.
Did you see him perform a test fire of the gun?
Yes, I did. I wasn't really watching. We had a lot of things going on, so I was kind of looking around, but I do remember him firing off a round, and I kind of saw, you know, just some dirt or grass move.
So when he fired the gun, what was the position in which he was holding the gun?
Straight down at the ground.
Like this?
Right.
And when you looked over, did you hear it go off?
I heard it go off.
When you looked over, tell the jury what you saw.
I just saw it out of my peripheral. I just saw the grass and the dirt moving over about 6 inches or so. I wasn't even really sure what it was. Maybe a little bit of dirt or grass, something like that.
FDLE interviewed you in this case, is that correct?
Yes.
And they interviewed you on January. They interviewed you on January 17, 2017, is that correct?
I'm not sure of the days. Sounds accurate.
No first witness.
You may.
You can just review, if this refreshes your recollection as to the distance of what you saw in the
Yeah, about 6 to 12 inches. Did
refresh
I?
your recollection?
Okay.
Okay, if it's refresh your recollection, I'll ask you a question. Okay, so, does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
And about how far did this, well, let me ask you, does that refresh your recollection as to seeing a
The
chunk
distance.
of grass?
Right, yes, about 6 to 12 inches.
And how far to go?
About 6 to 12 inches.
Now, at that time, were you aware of what wad cutters were?
No,
Was that even part of your thought process that that might be a wad cutter?
no. I didn't even know what a wad cutter was at that point.
Were you under the belief that Lee Cole was using blanks?
Yes.
And when that caught your attention, I take it?
What's that?
That caught your attention, seeing the ground move?
Yeah, I saw it, and it wasn't really that odd. I didn't really know what had caused it.
Okay. Now, in response to seeing that, in your response to seeing that happen, do you remember reacting and saying something in response to seeing it?
Overruled.
I remember saying something. I don't even really remember exactly what I said. It was just something like, you know, did you see that?
Please stop when there's an objection. Sustained.
Not Russian?
You may.
So upon seeing this and observing this, you blurted out something upon seeing it, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Would it help refresh your recollection to see your statements?
Sure.
Approach.
You may.
Did you blurt out at that point? Man, did you see that grass come up off the
Objection
ground?
leading.
Sustained.
What did you blurt out?
Man, did you see that grass come up off the ground?
Okay. Who were the other officers that were standing there with you?
I think Chandler was sitting next to me, Ron Chandler, DFC.
And Lee Cole obviously was firing the gun, correct?
Yes.
He was only about how many feet away from you when you said that?
Not very far, 5 or 6, 10 feet maybe.
Um, Did Lee Cole, your agency uses what kind of blanks?
At the time, we were using 357 blanks, I believe.
Are you familiar with the Winchester blanks?
I don't know what they were. Honestly, I didn't really deal a lot with the blank gun.
Did Lee Cole make any indication to you that he was using something different that day?
Yes.
Did you observe the ammo that he had?
Yes.
Now, and when you observed it, did you spend a lot of time looking at it, or you kind of just...
No, I just saw it sitting on the table.
Okay. And the ammo that you observed, did you make any observations about what you believe the top of it looked like?
Just had a blue film over the top of it, crimped
Okay.
a little.
All right. Did you seen that round before?
Had I seen it before? No, that was the first time.
Did it appear to be like a blank flat top?
Yeah, it was a flat top.
What color was it?
I don't remember what the casing was. I just kind of glanced over, and the only thing I could remember was the blue top on the top of it.
Did you see him load his weapon?
No,
Did anybody from your agency help him load his weapon?
no,
Did anybody from your agency check the ammo in his weapon?
no.
So now the demonstration for the public, let's go to that. That begins. Can you tell the jury what the first scenario was that Lee Cole was participating in for the demonstration that the public is going to watch?
The first scenario?
Right.
I think mine was the first scenario.
And what was that scenario?
I was doing a mock vehicle pursuit through the parking lot, and then we went out onto the gun range, and he was going to, we were doing a SWAT canine combo. So the SWAT team took a shot and simulating that they had taken out the driver, and then the passenger was supposed to get out and try to flee the vehicle armed with a handgun, which was Lee Cole. And he ran away from the vehicle. I deployed my dog through a canine pop and let him apprehend Lee Cole.
Did Lee Cole discharge the same weapon that you saw earlier?
Yes.
How many times did he discharge that weapon as public event?
I don't remember exactly how many, but it was multiple.
Do you remember the manner in which he aimed it?
He was pointing it in my direction.
At you?
I can't remember specifically. I was concentrating on the dog and what I was doing, so I didn't really see where he was pointing the firearm.
So when you say pointed at your direction, are you saying you don't know if it was like this or this?
Right.
Okay. Do you agree with me it was, well, let me ask you this. When you say pointing at the direction, you differentiated earlier about when he test fired it, he shot it straight down, right?
Right.
It wasn't that.
No, it wasn't straight down.
Now, he pointed the gun and shot it in your direction in any level. Tell the jury what was behind you as far as the public.
I believe it was the community policing group was behind me.
And who are the community policing group?
That's the people that were invited the civilians to watch the demonstration.
So then they were, I guess, to your back. Is that right?
Yes.
If a person had a live round in the gun and had shot in your direction, would that also be in the same direction of the public watch?
Yes, there was a little bit of a separation with my car, but I don't know how much that blocked because my vehicle, I was on the other side of my vehicle, and there was the vehicle, then Lee Cole was on the other end, and then the community policing group was behind us.
Citizens of the community policing group were approximately how many feet behind you?
They were probably a little ways back, not too far, 15, 20 feet, maybe 30 feet, not sure exactly.
Tell the jury about the second scenario that Lee Cole participated in at this public presentation.
That was the berm. We'll have a guy posted up on top of our shooting berm, and he'll get up there, we'll challenge him, he'll refuse to obey commands, and then shoot off a couple rounds towards the ground, and then we'll deploy the dog up the berm to apprehend the subject.
And what was Lee Cole's role in that?
He was the bad guy again, the guy that we were apprehending.
So did the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office permit him to use the same gun in this scenario?
Yes.
And tell the jury what you saw him do as far as use of the gun on the berm.
I really don't remember that scenario at all, so I really wouldn't be. I think he fired it at the ground. I don't remember him aiming out towards the crowd or any of that kind of stuff.
So, let me ask you this. Is it fair to say your recollection is that you think he fired that one at the ground?
I think he did. I really don't remember that scenario that well.
Would it help refresh your recollection to see your statement?
I can look at it, but this statement's,
Approach?
Okay.
Just let me know if that helps refresh your recollection.
Yeah.
So can you tell the jury where you think he did that?
Like I said in my statement, I think he fired it into the ground.
So, now, you had been in K-9 at that point for how long?
Probably about 2 years. Or no, I'm sorry, less than that, probably about a year and a half.
In your agency, was there a written policy regarding firing rounds in a community demonstration?
Sustained.
Well, in your training that Lee Cole participated in with your agency,
Right.
was there a written policy for Lee Cole's training and your training and all of you as the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office K-9 group regarding how you would point the guns in your K-9 training?
If we do, I'm not aware of it.
In your training that Lee Cole was present at, what are you trained to do with the blank as far as discharging? What are you trained to point?
Well, Lee Cole wasn't a part of our initial K-9 school. He was trained by Northport PD.
Right.
But while we were in K-9 school, the only way we deployed a gun was my trainer loaded the firearm, handed it to us. We walked out there, we pulled it out, we discharged 2 rounds into the ground, and then resecured the weapon and finished the exercise.
And that was in your training.
Right.
In the public demonstration, you didn't have anybody checking the gun.
Sustained.
Okay. You testified before that nobody checked Lee Cole's gun.
Right.
The question to you is, was there anybody checking anybody else's gun before the public demonstration, not the training?
Are you talking about other demonstrations or at this particular one?
Down there.
That was the only firearm that was fired at that event.
So, I think the answer is nobody checked the only firearm that was used in the public demonstration.
Right.
The use of a gun that fires blanks, either with the dog or for the community, the purpose of the blank is to do what?
Make a loud noise.
Did FDLE come interview at any point about the nature of what you just testified about?
Just the interview with the statement you have.
Did they ask you at any point to make any type of identification of any type of bullets?
Yes.
And did you make an identification of any type of bullets?
Yes.
And what was the color of the bullet that you identified with FDLE?
The one with the blue top.
So,
You may.
I'm going to show you what was marked as State's Exhibit 113. Now just take a look over the screen here. In this photo that you were shown, can you point out to the jury which one of those that you identified as the round that you saw with Legal?
I believe it's the one on the right. I think that's a blue top. It looks a little funny from my angle, but...
And that's what you identified then as the round that you saw with Legal?
Right.
And you believe from, I guess, the coloring of it, you thought the top was kind of blue?
Right.
Now again, tell the jury the circumstances in which you were making that observation.
I was just walking around doing a couple other things. He had the rounds laid out on the on one of our tables there. I just saw him as I was passing.
Did you go inspect it or examine it?
No.
Did you go read the bullet at all?
No.
Did you go inspect the box?
No.
Have a moment now.
You may. Cross-examination?
Good afternoon, Deputy Gilmer.
Oh.
How are you?
Good.
Who was your trainer for the K-9 unit?
Corporal Lenny Pravat.
And he was the one that would have loaded weapons before training?
Yes.
And when we're talking about, you said blank guns a couple times, we're talking about real guns that
Real
can
guns,
shoot
right.
blanks, right? And they can also shoot
Right.
projectiles. When you saw the grass move on that day that you talked about, did you know what that was from?
No.
If it was from a live projectile going into the ground?
No.
Did you know whether it was from concussion of a blank round?
That's what I was assuming.
said, we were looking at States 113, you said it had a blue top,
Right.
did it have a crimped top?
Yes, I believe so.
You remember the color of the casing?
No.
Fair to say you don't know what kind of brown that was?
Yes.
Or brand or anything like that?
No.
The vehicle scenario that you were asked about, do you know how many shots you fired?
Like I said, it was numerous. It was more than one. I would say it was more than two. So anywhere from 3 and up.
And I think you said that it was in your direction, is that right?
Yes.
Do you know if it was pointed directly at you?
I don't know if it was pointed directly at me.
And of course, you weren't at the Punta Gorda Police Department on August 9th of last year.
No.
You don't have any personal knowledge of what happened that night?
No.
Thank you. No further questions, Ron.
May I step down? Briefly?
To your knowledge, did you or anybody in your agency contact the Punta Gorda Police Department after this event to relay any of this to that agency?
No.
So you may step down. And call your next witness.
That's called Letter to Battle.
Good afternoon. If you could stand here and face the clerk to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
This one, please. Just watch your step on this.
Entry. Please make sure to speak in the microphone. You may inquire.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Please state your name, please.
Leonard Pravat.
Mr. Pravat, on August 9th, in July of 2016, where were you employed?
The Charlotte County Sheriff's Office.
What was your role there?
I was a corporal in the K-9 unit and also the head trainer.
And as the corporal in the K-9 unit and the head trainer, how long have you been in that position?
Been in the K-9 unit 20 years, and I'd been a trainer there for 10.
At that time, when you were the head trainer, did you use the blanks to certify with FDLE?
Yes, sir.
You knew somebody named Nicole?
Yes, sir.
How did you name Nicole?
He was a K-9 officer for Punta Gorda Police Department. At that time, I was also training his dog.
Were you Officer Cole's trainer for the K-9 portion?
Yes, sir.
And how often did Officer Cole participate in training with the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office?
We do in-service training there 2 times a month.
And on about July 26, 2016, was there a Citizens Police Academy at the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office?
I believe there was. I'm not sure the date. I don't remember that, but I know that yeah, there was one there.
Was there one of the three? Canine officers, was there something that preceded it?
No.
Do you recall that?
No, it was a training night, and we started it off with that demonstration for the Citizens Police Academy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so, the Citizens Police Academy, who was putting that on? What agency?
Charlotte County Sheriff's Office.
And do you remember about how many people from the public were in attendance?
Probably 25 or 30, be my guess.
And where was it being put on?
Part of it was being put on in the training building in the classrooms, and then part of it was also being put on behind the training building out on the range area. That's also where, next to the range area, we keep the agility equipment for the dogs, so they could see all of that.
That night, did Lee pull out the gun?
Yes.
And can you describe the gun that he had on the jury?
The gun I saw was small, looks like 2-inch. I believe it was a Smith & Wesson, I'm not sure of the make.
Revolver?
Yes, sir, it was a revolver, chrome plate, I believe.
The real gun?
Yes, sir.
Now, before the scenario began, do you recall looking at the blanks that he was using?
Yes, sir.
Now, what type of blanks at that time would you usually use?
What we would usually use is the Winchester blanks.
You were familiar with Winchester?
Yes, sir.
Was the blank that you saw him using a Winchester blank?
No, sir. The box wasn't.
So at some point then, before the incident began, did there come a time where you were looking closer at the blanks or checking them out?
Yes, sir. I had no assigned role in any of the demonstrations, so I was headed up front to the classroom. I looked over and I just saw the box. I didn't recognize it. So I walked over to it and I asked him, I said, new blanks. And he said, yeah, they're cheaper. And I picked up the box and looked in it. It was open and they were loose rounds laying on top of each other in the box, and they appeared to be blanks.
Now, how long did you inspect them, anything like that?
No, sir, I don't remember doing anything like that. I put the box back down, and I think I even asked him if they were just as loud as the Winchesters, and he said yes.
Okay. Is that, after you asked that, did he go do anything with them to?
Yes, sir, he took one out of the box, and he was going to chamber it to fire it off to show that they were just as loud.
Okay. And so when he fired it off, were you watching him?
No, not really. We had people that were there that may not have been in on conversation what we were doing. Right. So when he went to put the round in the chamber and stepped out to fire it, I turned around to yell we were going to fire, test fire a gun, and it went off when I was looking the other way. And when I looked back, he was already walking back towards him.
Okay. So when you went to fire the gun, you were announcing to people were firing.
We're test firing a gun. Yeah.
Did you look into the ground where he fired it, or were you looking away?
Yeah, no, sir, I didn't look at the ground. I didn't know if he'd fired it down range or just fired it into the ground.
Okay.
I assumed he fired into the ground because that's where we usually would point him.
So as his trainer, was he trained in proper and safe use of using a blank and a gun that could also fire real bullets?
Yes, sir, I believe so. He was already trained and certified when I got him. He'd already been working his dog for a year, and he already had his own equipment as far as blank gun and blanks. During any of the times that I watched him or he used them with me, I never saw anything that was out of the ordinary or wrong.
When you saw him use the blank gun in your training, did you see him firing it in a way that you knew was proper within the training?
Yes, sir, for us. The only time, I've only saw him do it 2 or 3 times.
And those times, how did he fire it?
Down on the ground.
So did you have any question as to whether he knew what the proper way was to fire a blank gun?
No, sir. Didn't have any question at all.
In your training role as a head trainer there, and when he worked with you, did you ever train him to point a blank gun at somebody?
No, sir, never.
Would that violate his training with your agency?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury why.
Because it's dangerous. Even the blanks that we were using, they expel quite a bit of blast out the barrel. I've seen them at night throw a 2-foot flame out the barrel. And when you're working with dogs can get injured very quickly. You could wind up shooting one in the face by accident. So we were never allowed, no one was ever allowed to point a gun, whether it was a blank gun or whatever, at a dog. Everything went down to the ground. And also, too, dogs just need to hear the noise. That's all you're shooting the gun for, is the loudness of the noise. So it doesn't matter if you're pointing at them, which you shouldn't be anyway, but there's no reason to.
The Charlotte County Sheriff's Office gun that used the blanks, what kind of gun was that?
That was a Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum, 4-inch barrel.
And that's the one you've described that you've seen before, where you see
Yes.
the flame come out?
Oh, yes, sir.
Did you see the type of revolver that Lee Cole was using at that demonstration?
The one we were,
I mean, the caliber of it, I guess.
I believe it was a 38.
So when you did this, were you present when the demonstration was done?
No, sir.
Now, the Citizens Academy there, was that something that was approved and put on by your sheriff?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
And did that type of academy, did it involve anything, well, clarify for me, where did that start as far as, was it out on the range for the demonstration, or was there something done inside first?
Well, they usually start off in the classroom, telling them what they're going to be doing, and however it is they do. They also eat in there first before they go out, I guess. And then by the time, what we do is we wait for them back there, and by the time they come back there, we're ready to put on the dog demonstration.
When you guys are doing the demonstration out there, is somebody else doing the presentation in the training room?
There wasn't anybody in there. They were all out there.
That's what I'm saying, is somebody else speaking to the crowd?
Objection, relevance? Sustained.
Let me ask you this. Did Lee Cole have any role with instructing anybody or talking to anybody in the training room as far as the presentation?
No, sir.
So his role, I take it, all outside?
Yes, sir.
And you said before you were the head trainer, is that right?
I was the most senior trainer that they had at that time, yeah.
Did you do any type of checking of his gun before he went out there as far as going through his rounds or anything like that?
No, sir.
Did you have, as part of your training, would you ever employ wad cutters for canine training?
No, sir.
Did you have any expectation that any of the officers in the demonstration would be using wad cutters?
No, sir.
Got a moment now?
You may. Cross-examination?
Yeah, just briefly. So you started training with Cole with Lee Cole when Tom was sent to you, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you just said you didn't check the ammunition he was using?
Not that night.
Okay, do you remember giving a statement to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement on August 22nd of 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and when they asked, the question was, I'm on page 11 going into 12. Can you tell us what blank loads he was using? You answer, I can't remember the name of them, they were different. I used to use Winchester blank loads because it's really loud, sounds like a Magnum when it goes off. His were made by a different company, I wish I could remember the name, I can't. But I checked them, they were just normal blank loads.
Yes, ma'am. And what I meant by that was I visually checked them, like when I picked up the box and looked in there, but I didn't dump out the box or go through them or anything like that.
Okay, so, but you visually did.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Now, what color were they, do you remember?
I wish I could. For some reason, I want to say it was a brass-colored casing, but I don't know why that stands out in my mind.
Okay, and if back on August 22nd you said brass, would that probably be it?
Yes, ma'am.
On stage 113, in the center there's a brass round.
Yes, ma'am.
That is?
Yes, ma'am. It looks like a blank to me.
Okay, and all the way to the right, the aluminum round, what is that?
That's a wad cutter.
Okay. And did you see the wad cutter with the ammunition that was sitting on the table that day?
No, ma'am.
So you did not see lethal with wad cutters?
No, ma'am.
What shape was the box?
It was a 2x2 cube
It
box.
was a cube, it wasn't a long rectangle?
Yeah, it was a cube.
Are you familiar with lasers?
Yes, ma'am.
It was the box you saw of the lasers?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and again, you said they were just kind of all loose in there.
Yes, ma'am. They were just loose in the
Not
box.
individually slotted?
No, ma'am.
I have no further questions.
Okay, redirect.
So, when FDLE interviewed you about this, and you raised the brass issue, they asked you, were you sure about that? You weren't completely sure?
No, sir, I wasn't.
And you You testified before that you know what Winchester rounds looked like, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was not what you saw him with, correct?
No, sir.
And before when the state asked you here that you checked and looked at the box, my question is, before he went out on that range, did you go look and what was in his gun as to far as what he was going to be shooting with the public nearby watching?
No, sir, I wasn't down there.
Okay. Did you ever read the box itself to determine what the box was that he had?
No, sir, I just briefly saw the name on it, and I can't recall the name of it.
Do you even know if the box that he had was the box that the ammunition you saw came in?
No, sir.
Nothing but.
Next witness, step down. Please approach. Call your next witness.
You have to call Deputy Ronald Chandler.
Good afternoon. You can stand here and face the clerk to be sworn, please.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this class will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
This way, please. Just one yourself. Thank you.
Please make sure to speak into the microphone. Counsel? You may inquire.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Hello.
Could you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
I'm Deputy Ronald Chandler,
Okay, and where are you employed, sir?
Charlotte County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you worked there?
Since 2005, going on 13 years.
And what's your current position?
I am the canine handler for the Street Crimes Unit.
In July of 2016, what was your position there?
Canine handler.
How long have you been in that position with the sheriff's office?
4 years now.
Do you know a person by the name of Nicole?
I do.
How do you know Nicole?
We trained with him a couple times.
Were you ever a field training officer for Nicole?
Not for Lee Cole, no.
All right. In your canine training, does Lee Cole train with the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office?
He did for a few times.
Okay. And were you present at a time in July of 2016 there was going to be a community presentation?
For the community, yes.
What was that was there that night? What was the presentation?
It was just some for our community. They put on a, trying to think of what it's called, it's the community police training. They just show the community what law enforcement does, what we do within Charlotte County Sheriff's Office.
And in that, do they do demonstrations for them?
Yes, each unit will put on something to show what we do.
And in those demonstrations, do they use guns that are capable of firing blanks?
I can't speak for all the demonstrations. For canine, we do.
Okay. And, all right, so that night, before you went and did the demonstration, was there an incident that came up involving Lee Cole's gun?
I don't know if it was Lee Cole's gun. We were preparing for the demonstration. If I'm getting what you were about, we were preparing for the demonstration. We had decided who was going to do what as far as agility, obedience, narcotics, apprehensions. This is for the demonstration. Each dog is going to have an assignment.
When you're deciding that, was there some kind of script or protocol beforehand you were going off of?
No, just who wants to do what.
Okay.
Every dog's capable of doing anything.
All right. What happened next?
We were underneath the overhang near the range. We were all just standing around talking, waiting for everything to take place. Someone test fired one of the blank guns, I thought, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw disturbance on the ground. I don't know exactly what it was. But then another deputy said, "Did you see that?" I said, "I thought I saw something."
Okay. All right. And a disturbance on the ground, you mean the ground moved to some degree?
Yeah, like there was just a certain spot on the ground and something moved it.
Now, you recall seeing dirt move, is that correct?
Yeah, the dirt, grass, something along those lines.
Did you know what wad cutters were?
At that time, no.
Do you have any expectation that anybody there would be firing something with a wad cutter or a projectile coming out of the guns that were fired?
No.
After that, was there a kind of a group discussion about what possibly was seen?
I wouldn't call it, it's not like we got into a circle, but I thought I saw it. The deputy, I believe it was Gilmer, was sitting next to me. He said, "Hey, I thought I saw something. What was it?"
And where was Lee Cole when you discussed it with other people?
I can't remember exactly where he was standing. He was present, but I don't know where.
Okay, I don't mean specifically, but was he amongst the people at this discussion?
Yeah, it's just maybe a 10 by 8 overhang, maybe a little bit bigger than that. We're all usually at the corner nearest to the concrete.
Were you speaking in a tone that was loud enough that anybody near you could hear you?
Yes.
Okay. Was Deputy Gilmer speaking in a tone loud enough anybody near could hear you?
Yeah.
And Lee Cole was near you, correct?
I don't know how close near me, but if he was paying attention to what we were saying, he would have heard us.
In your training as a canine deputy, are you ever trained, where are you trained to discharge your gun, whether you're near a dog or you're doing a community event?
We were trained to discharge our blank gun, not my gun.
Where are you trained to discharge the blank gun in a community event or around the dog?
Yes, it's part of training the dogs.
Where? How do you aim it?
To the ground.
Now, were you part of the scenarios that happened that night?
I was a part of the agility scenario. The rest of the time I was just a bystander.
Okay. Did you watch Lee Cole participate in those scenarios?
Not all of them. I believe I saw him on the berm.
Okay, and when you saw him on the berm, did you see him use his gun in a manner in which he pointed at someone?
If I can recall correctly, we do this the same scenario we do, but most every time he's aiming at the ground, or whatever decoy is aiming at the ground.
The group of people that were there, tell the jury basically kind of where the group of people were standing in relation to the demonstration.
During that portion of the demonstration, usually it's under the same overhang that we were at to start. They're right there next to the field so they can see the dog perform.
So is the demonstration in the field?
Some portion of the demonstration, our bite work, where the berm is right there on the same field, the gun range.
What about the discharging of the firearms? In the field?
In the field.
And the public is standing like on the edge of the field?
They're usually sitting on bleachers underneath the overhang.
Okay. And about how far are they from any part of the demonstration where they're sitting? If you know.
Well, I can guess here. It's when you start the bite work, the dog is going to be maybe 15 feet from where they're sitting and then going away from them. For the berm, the dog is about in the same area, but he runs up the berm, which is at least 50 yards away.
So when the dog is going on the bite work, and you said it runs toward, is it running towards a person that is supposed to be the bad guy?
Yeah, our decoy.
Does the dog run in, the way your demonstration is set up, if I'm where the public is watching, and you said the dog initially is about 15 feet away, when it's released, does it head kind of straight in line with the crowd that's there?
No, we won't go straight away from it's going to go at an angle. We got to have room to run. When the decoy is running out, the dog's going to catch him. We usually think it's 30 feet before we even start to recall him if we're going to do that.
Is the bad guy further out ahead of the dog?
Yes.
Okay. Does the bad guy in that role at some point discharge his gun with the blanks?
Sometimes. I don't remember if that was done that night.
So you don't remember how it was done in that particular case?
Not for that night, no.
Okay. If the dog is coming from an area by the public, and going out at an angle towards the person that had the bad guy. Is the bad guy facing back towards the public?
To start, but then he turns and runs, and the dog gives chase.
And when he runs, has he fired the gun yet, or he fired before?
If that's the scenario we're doing with gunfire, then it's usually guns at the ground. Handler nods his head to indicate to the decoy we are ready for him to do what he's going to do. He fires one round as he starts to turn, fires another round. Most of the time we'll drop the gun right there and then run. The dog comes out and will apprehend the decoy.
And that's designed to shoot the gun at the ground?
Correct.
At the dog?
No.
Or the handler that's releasing it?
No.
To make the noise in the training that Lee Cole received with you, with your agency for demonstrations, how many times generally in the training for the noise purpose is the blank fired?
Per dog. Blanks aren't cheap, so we try to keep it to 2 per dog just to get what we need out of it to cover that scenario if we're training each dog individually that night. For the demo, it's usually only 2 per scenario that we decide to use the blank for.
So the normal training procedure for the demos that Lee Cole was doing with you would not require him to empty his complete chamber?
Normally, we don't empty everything out in one scenario.
You may. Cross-examination?
Good afternoon, Deputy Chairman.
Hello.
You work with Lenny Pravat in your K-9 unit?
Yes, when he was hired with us, he's retired.
And Deputy Gilmer as well?
Yes.
And Sergeant Jason Doherty?
Yes.
And you said Lee Cole trained with you on a few different occasions that you remember?
Yes.
Do you remember an occasion when he trained with you all at the Charlotte County Speedway?
Yes.
Can you tell us kind of what that training was?
There was multiple scenarios in that one. One, we used I believe there was a fog machine involved. Decoy was hidden in a building, several doors, several areas. The dog had to source where he was at and locate him inside the building. Once we finished that portion, there was another section in the tower, like the press stand for a raceway. The dog was released outside. He searched, there's almost like 2 separate buildings, 3 total, but where we were pointing the dog was 2 separate buildings. Once the dog indicated on a door, showing that there was human scent coming from out of that door, the door was open, we give our announcements, and the dog was deployed inside the building.
Lee Cole was playing the bad guy in that building?
Yes, he was a pretty good decoy for us.
And does he have to fire a gun during that scenario?
During that scenario, he did.
Training, I should say. And the dog goes up and apprehends him?
Yeah, there were stairs. The dog had to conquer the stairs, basically go up narrow wooden stairs to an area and apprehend the decoy without us being present. They need to work without us being there.
Cole didn't fire that gun near anybody or any of the dogs or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. He was in a separate room.
The training with Officer Cole at the gun range that we talked about, was that sometime before the speedway training we just talked about?
I'm not really sure on how far apart those 2 were. It could have been the same night, but I'm not sure.
Sure. And I think you said it happened on like a training field at the gun range?
That's the gun range itself. We have a canine training field as a part next to our SWAT course, and it's all one giant area.
I understand. On the gun range there's that berm that Officer Cole was on top of?
Yes.
And he fired his gun into the ground there on that berm?
Right.
When he test fired the gun that day, did you see him actually fire it?
No, I didn't see who fired the gun.
You don't know where he pointed that gun?
No, I don't know where it was pointed.
The disturbance you saw on the ground, did you think anything of it?
I thought maybe it was the wadding, like paper that's usually put in there, like packed in with a blank. Maybe it could have been it. It could have been the concussion from the sound coming out of the barrel. It wasn't anything that was made to believe to be a big deal.
You can't sit here and say that it was a projectile that was
No.
fired on the ground. Do you have any concerns that there were live rounds being used in that training that day?
At that time, no.
Obviously, you weren't at the Punta Gorda Police Department on August 9th last year.
No.
Thank you. I have any other questions for you?
Can you redirect?
So, in the scenario about when you saw the ground disturbance you talked about there, is it fair to say that your particular mindset there was not even contemplating that somebody would have something with a bullet or a projectile coming out of it, right?
No, no.
So you were trying to make sense of it from the point of, it should be a blank, how did that happen, right?
Right, it was a gunshot, but it shouldn't have been a live round from where we were standing.
And whatever happened, it was enough that you guys were discussing. Whatever was observed, did that cause a discussion among the people?
A few of us, yes.
Assistant,
None of them.
may this witness step down?
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's about 10 to 5. I think that's a good time to stop. We've been going all day with testimony, so before I release you, I'm going to advise you again, please do not discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anybody else. If somebody does approach you, advise them you're a member of the jury, and to not speak with you. Please do not do any of your own investigation or watch any news, reports, social media, Twitter, anything like that with regarding to this